Good evening. I have a couple of practical issues to highlight. We have no fire drill planned tonight, so if there's a fire alarm, please make your way out of the building in a calm and orderly fashion as guided by staff. People with mobility issues should gather in the foyer. On the left-hand side, as you leave the chamber, near to the balustrade, where assistance will be provided. Toilets at the far end of the corridors, either side of the chamber. Ladies to the left as you leave, gents to the right. After 2 hours, I will ask members whether they wish to oppose any remaining items on the agenda. If members wish to oppose an item, this will be debated and voted on. Where an item is unopposed, this will be agreed by the Council without debate. Following consultation with group leaders, I've used my discretion to change the order of the agenda due to public interest in certain items. The agenda will be taken in the following order: declarations of interest, questions from the public, questions to Cabinet members, motion 8B, motion 8C, motion 8A, motion 8D, motion 8E, motion 8F, minutes, constitution update, statutory officers, and finally, update to the capital programme. Apologies have been received from Councillor Worley. I could also apologise to people here. There is an issue with the heating system, so you may have noticed we have no heating on in here this evening. So I have a few announcements to make from events that I've attended over the last 2 months since we had the last full council. Probably the first one that I want to talk about was a visit to the Soul Church Social Supermarket, Soul Foundation, which is one of the social supermarkets that's part of the Norwich and Norfolk initiative, which is the civic charity for this year. And they do some absolutely fantastic work in Clapham Grove, so it's great to be able to see that. We also had the Edith Cavell Memorial, recognising the anniversary of her execution and the work that she did during the First World War. It was also really interesting to be invited along to the current exhibition on at the castle, which is Norwich Works Industrial Photography. It's on until the 14th of April, so I really would recommend that people attend it. And if you're interested in the history of Norwich, it looks at some of the fantastic industrial heritage we have through the lens of two photographers, and it's really interesting. For those of you who have long roots in Norwich, you may well end up noticing family members who worked in the shoe industry and similar. We then had Black History Month, or the end of Black History Month, where we had a fantastic event in here which contained much dancing and the unveiling of a portrait to former Lord Mayor Councillor Kevin Maguire. And I think that was a really fantastic event, and perhaps some of us were a little reluctant initially to take part in the dancing, but when we did, it was great fun. We then had the National Symphony Orchestra of Ukraine. Now, members who were here in March 2022 may remember that following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we awarded the freedom of Norwich to the Ukrainian cities of Lviv and Odessa. Well, those freedom scrolls had remained with the Writers' Centre, as it hadn't been possible to hand those over to those Ukrainian cities. With the orchestra visiting Norwich as the last stage of their 15-night tour and then heading straight back to Ukraine, I took that as an opportunity to hand over those scrolls to, I think, if I'm being honest, to two slightly bewildered members of the Ukrainian orchestra representing their home cities. I don't think they fully were able to understand what honorary freedom of the city was, but hopefully those scrolls have now made their way back. I'd like to thank Councillor Giles for inviting me along to Living Wage Week and to say a few words at that. It's always very positive the way that this city has continually embraced the living wage cause over the years. We then, of course, had Remembrance Sunday and everything that sat alongside that, where the city came together to mark the remembrance for lives lost in initially, obviously, the First and then Second World Wars. And then, of course, Christmas lights ritual. And it was interesting to be involved in a snowball fight with Santa, or Father Christmas, I should say. And it was an excellent evening out in the city. The rain perhaps put a few people off, but those who did come along enjoyed themselves. Now, As we approach this time of festivities, where we often wish peace and joy to all, in recent weeks we've had a sharp reminder that for many, now is not a time of peace nor joy, but instead a time of great suffering and hardship. With that in mind, I call upon Council to join me in a minute's silence in memory of those who have suffered loss arising from conflict around the world. Thank you. We will now hold a minute's silence. I've been asked by a member if they can make a short personal statement. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillors Stuteley, Everett, Oliver and I will be resigning the Labour Whip with immediate effect and crossing the floor to sit as an independent group. With your permission, Councillor Oliver needs to make a brief statement about her cabinet position, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I resign my cabinet position with immediate effect.
Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any declarations of interest to make on any of the items on the agenda? Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, I've got a non-pecuniary interest on item 8F.
8F, non-pecuniary. Councillor Packer.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. I was a former employee of Norwich practices, so 8F.
Okay, thank you. Any other members? Thank you. Well, we now move on to questions from the public. We've received 5 public questions at this meeting. The first is from Mr. Danny Wilson. Mr. Wilson, would you please ask your question?
Thank you for this opportunity. Unfortunately, it can be challenging for those with disabilities and medical needs to get appropriate support when facing discrimination. Can Cabinet members tell me how the Council ensures both the Council itself as well as businesses such as landlords and venues in the city do not discriminate against those with all forms of disabilities, and particularly those who take medical cannabis, in providing a decent quality of life to the city?
Councillor Giles, would you give your response, please?
The Council is strongly committed to meeting its obligations under the Equality Act. We acknowledge the positive contribution those with protected characteristics can and do make to the vibrancy of Norwich, as well as that of other groups we have identified as vulnerable to disadvantage. As such, we extend our commitment to enabling all Norwich residents and the many other communities we serve through the delivery of fair and accessible services in our role as an employer, a contractor of goods and services, and community leader, and in the deployment of our assets, funds, and influence. We seek to ensure that nobody in Norwich experiences discrimination because of a perceived difference, taking a proactive role to reduce inequalities, remove barriers to participation, and promote accessibility for all, supporting the overarching aims of our forthcoming Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Strategy 2024-2027. The Equality Act 2010 covers everyone in Britain and defends employees and the public's right not to be discriminated against when interacting with their employers, public services, businesses, transport, clubs and associations, and public bodies. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, you're allowed one supplementary question. Do you have a supplementary question?
My supplementary question is that will the council ensure that members of the public requesting access to the Equalities Officer are provided access to the Equalities Officer in order to resolve any issues that may arise?
Thank you. Councillor Giles, will you please give your reply?
I'm happy for you to raise any inquiries with me outside the meeting. I'm the Cabinet member responsible for the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion strategy, so please direct them in the first instance in my direction.
Thank you. The second question is to Ms. Kat Aitchison. Ms. Aitchison, would you please ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Norwich City Council banks with Barclays, a bank which, according to Warren Wealth, holds £1.3 billion of shares in companies supplying weapons to Israel. It is also one of the largest funders of the fossil fuel industry in the world, according to the Rainforest Action Network and a coalition of environmental non-governmental organisations. Given that the Council has acknowledged we are in a climate emergency, and considering Barclays' role in funding Israel's illegal occupation of Palestine and systemic violence against Palestinian civilians, will the Council commit to removing its business from Barclays when the banking contract comes up for renewal next year?
Thank you. Councillor Kendrick, could you please give your reply?
Thank you very much for your question. As you may be aware, there is a motion on the agenda today relating to the role that banks play in funding activities and what we can do as a council. What local authorities can do when buying services subject to significant restrictions. At the moment, we have to follow the public procurement rules, which will soon be replaced by the new Procurement Act, as well as laws such as the Local Government Act 1988. Whilst these laws may be designed to ensure we get best value when spending public money, they also place significant restrictions on our ability to take ethical considerations into account. By law, we have to make our decisions based on economic considerations. And for example, cannot rule out companies because of their employment practices on the countries in which they choose to invest in. With that in mind, it would be unlawful for me to sit here and say that we will remove our business from Barclays. It's also worth bearing in mind that some banks may be seen as more ethical, such as the Co-op, and withdrawn from providing banking services to local authorities. However, what I can commit is to try and ensure that we attract all willing banks to the tender and looking at what we can do within the bounds of the law when assessing the different tenders we receive for their social and ethical merits, as part of the important criteria of ensuring we achieve best value for the public purse. Banking services are a key part of Council's treasury management operations, and they provide the essential service required for any modern organisation receiving and making financial payments. The current banking contract was awarded following a joint procurement with 7 other Norfolks was completed in 2014. The open procurement for a new banking provider when the current contract expires will also be conducted via a joint procurement and will be open to all interested parties, provided able to meet the specifications of the service. Council will not be able to restrict which banks can submit tenders as part of the procurement process, and it is likely there will only be a small number of industry providers willing and able to provide banking services to a large, complex number of local authorities. The main benefit of joint banking procurement is it allows the City Council to pool its banking requirements and provide a greater opportunity to leverage better prices and concentrate service quality as part of the tender. The Council will work with other contracting organisations participating in the joint procurement to design a service specific against which service provider tenders will be evaluated. Whilst quality of service and contract price are likely to be the key evaluation criteria, environmental, social and government policies will also be included and form part of the overall contract award. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Aitchison, you're allowed one supplementary question. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. Given that you cannot commit to removing citizens' money from Barclays, there are still many other things that the Council can do to show solidarity with the Palestinian people and with all those affected by Israel's violence. When Russia invaded Ukraine, Norwich City Council released a statement calling on the UK government to go further in support of Ukrainian refugees, and as the Lord Mayor mentioned earlier, there were special awards given to Ukrainian institutions as well. But we have not seen the Council extend the same solidarity and humanity to Palestinians. This double standard is unacceptable. So, will the Council follow the lead of other councils, such as Sheffield and Preston, which have passed motions in support of a ceasefire? And will the Council release a statement calling for a permanent ceasefire in Gaza and for the UK to do everything in its power to support Palestinians?
Thank you for your supplementary question. Councillor Kendrick, given that the supplementary question isn't directly related to the original question, it's entirely up to you if you wish to answer or not.
I was about to say that at the end of the day, that goes beyond the scope of my purview, but it obviously that's for the whole council to decide for themselves.
Thank you.
You cannot stand and remain in silence as people who have been killed during the conflict.
Thank you. Would you mind taking your seat again, please?
Is it possible to get a response from Mike Stoddard as the leader of the council? I think this might be an appropriate question.
You asked your question and it's been dealt with. Unfortunately, there will be no further discussion on this subject. And now move on to the next
I don't
question.
believe my question has been dealt with as it hasn't been answered or addressed by anyone.
You asked a question about banking. An answer was given about banking. You then moved on to an issue which is very important, but is not covered by the scope of our rules around supplementary questions. So therefore, an answer doesn't have to be given.
This council is helping Barclays to fund genocide.
Would you mind please being quiet so we can continue our meeting?
Because of the funding of fossil
Would you please be quiet, or I'll have to ask you for you to be removed.
I think the question was quite a reasonable one, in fact, and I would like a response from a member of the council.
I'm afraid your question is now over and we need to move on to the next questioner. Okay, the third question is from Mr. Stuart McLaren. Mr. McLaren, would you please ask your question? Mr. McLaren, would you please wait? There's some disruption in the chamber at the moment.
I believe there might be less disruption if we have an answer to the question. There are many things that the council could do to show solidarity.
That is my ruling. Would you please leave the chamber now?
I have asked a reasonable question. I would really like to hear from councillors their response on this.
You will now be escorted from the chamber. Mr. McLaren, if you'd like to proceed with asking your question, please.
I recently visited the newly refurbished St George's Children's Play Area, which has significantly improved this community with its colourful, lively and imaginative ocean theme, including a playful shark. Can a Cabinet member comment on how the changes delivered to the new play area will encourage more young people to get outside and enjoy the facilities provided?
Thank you. Councillor Giles, would you please give your reply?
Involving local families in the design of the play area from the start undoubtedly ensured the project's success, though the 400 responses online and in-person responses. There was an expectation that those families involved would use the play area. That has been fed back through compliments and most recently from a resident that lives opposite the park, commenting on how well used the space is now. The council has invested heavily in this new play area and it has been designed to be accessible with inclusive features within the play space so that every child should have equal access to good, meaningful play opportunities. The equipment is designed to enable users with a wide range of abilities to enjoy play spaces together. The play area also caters to a larger age range than before. It has 44 features and can keep up to 35 children engaged in providing physical, social, emotional, imaginative and cognitive development. And there's a link in the written answer provided on the benefits of play provision for benefits.
Thank you. Mr. McLaren, you can ask a supplementary question. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. I'm conscious the City Council manages 81 play areas across the city. the Cabinet member be able to highlight what is the next project, and more broadly, how the Council will seek to effectively manage and invest in your play area portfolio?
Thanks for Giles. Would you please give your answer?
Sorry, Lord Mayor, thank you. Thank you. As you've alluded to, the City Council has a very significant portfolio of play areas. While such quantity of sites is brilliant for children, given a large number were constructed at a time of less constrained council budgets, managing the portfolio to an acceptable standard does pose challenges. Nonetheless, we will take all opportunities to upgrade our play areas to good standards. With leftover levelling up parks funding for Wenston Park, we are looking to upgrade the smaller play area in the park, following on from the upgrade of the larger play area 12 months ago. This upgrade will incorporate an expansion of the existing smaller play area into the space currently occupied by the disused paddling pool. 3 draft designs have been received, and we will be out on site at Wenston Park in the coming weeks to discuss with the friends groups, local children and parents their thoughts on the draft designs and what they want out of the scheme. I'm also committed that the designs will also be shared with Dragons and send friendly Norwich to seek their input in ensuring compliance with our obligations under the Equality Act. We have also requested draft designs for play area upgrades at Eaton Park and Waterloo Park over the coming months. Both play areas are in need of upgrading to maintain these destination parks to the highest standard reflected in their green flag status. Capital funding is secured, and we will follow a similar process to that at Wenston. More broadly, the Council is a long way through the process of auditing our play area stock as a whole for quality and value, in addition to the normal safety checks we conduct. This auditing process will feed into a play strategy sitting under our broader Parks and Open Spaces strategy, which will highlight how Section 106 developer contributions and City Council capital funding can be prioritised over the coming years to where investment is needed most. Community First Partnership are also conducting an inclusivity audit of the stock to feed into the nature of the upgrades. The Council highly values the role of play areas in child development and stronger health and wellbeing outcomes, and will continue to prioritise this free access to play facilities across the city.
Thank you. The fourth question is from Ms Hurst. Ms Hurst, would you please ask your question?
When will Norwich City Council update its development and management policies to enhance sustainable development requirements? A recent planning application, for example, reference 23012008F, has missed an opportunity to install a green roof. Other authorities, such as the City of London, already updated their local plan in October 2023 with climate change and resilience measures and carbon offsetting. They recognise that green roofscapes are integral to sustainable drainage systems, reducing water runoff, increasing biodiversity, and connecting green corridors.
Thank you. Councillor Starlight, would you please give your reply?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Ms Hurst, for your question. Norwich City Council has committed to update its Development Management Policies Plan, DMPP, once there is clarity from national government about planning reforms, in particular the proposed introduction of National Development Management Policies, that's NMDP, and once the Greater Norwich Local Plan, GNLP, is adopted. It is important that we understand which policy areas will be covered by the NDMP before commencing work on the new DMPP in order to avoid abortive work. So the intention is to commence work on the new plan once this is clear. That's anticipated for the summer of 2024. By then, the GNLP should be adopted, which sets a strategic policy framework and includes policies relating to sustainable development. This includes Policy 2, Sustainable Communities, which addresses a range of sustainability issues for the new development, including the use of sustainable drainage to reduce flood risk. Policy 3, Environmental Enhancement and Protection, sets requirements for biodiversity net gain and, in conjunction with policies 2 and 4, for on or off-site green infrastructure delivery. Green roofs may be a potential solution for some urban schemes as the most suitable way of meeting the requirements for biodiversity net gain, green infrastructure provision and sustainable drainage, where considered appropriate. It is interesting to note that the draft City of London local plan policy, which is yet to be submitted for examination, is not wholly prescriptive but promotes the use of green roofs where they are appropriate. Development of the new DMPP and implementation of the GMLP will also be informed by evidence studies currently underway, including, for example, a biodiversity baseline study, which is likely to be completed in early 2024, and an updated Greater Norwich Green Infrastructure Strategy, which should be completed in late 2024. I think that sets out the position before. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Ms. Hurst, you're allowed one supplementary question. Do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The final question is from Mr. Alex Gosling. Mr. Gosling, would you please ask your question?
Thank you. One of the core principles of democratic governance is the scrutiny of public office, scrutiny of the behaviour of people who hold such offices, and indeed scrutiny of the powers that they exercise while in office. They should bring about accountability for missteps, accidental or otherwise, but providing of which it's a job I know many elected councillors, particularly in the opposition, take very seriously. But crucially, surely the most important people a council should be accountable to is its constituents, those who elect it and those who use and pay for its services. Given the reputation of local democracy, that it is often detached from the general public and their material interests, I wonder if the leader would mind, or if the council is replied, would mind giving me a brief overview of some of the things he and his administration are doing to showcase and engage the public with the work of this chamber.
Thank you. Councillor Starr, would you please give your reply?
Thank you, Mr. Gosling. Thank you for your question. Of course, your participation here today recognises and reflects how we want to engage with the public in what we do. I very much agree with you that accountability to our constituents is critical. We need to understand their hopes, ambitions and concerns and be guided by that in all that we do. To ensure that we are currently in the midst of a major citywide engagement exercise, seeking the views of all in the city. We will use this to inform a new corporate plan, which will set the Council's priorities and guide how we focus our resources for the next 5 years up to 2029. It's a real opportunity to make sure the views of our city are fully understood and taken into account by those who are fortunate enough to represent the people of Norwich. We have numerous engagement opportunities, focus groups, on-street engagement in communities across the city with researchers on hand, to talk to people as they go about their day, one-to-one interviews with key partners, and a public survey which, as of last week, had over 4,400 views and nearly 700 responses. We're trying to reach as many people as we can, so please do spread the word and get involved in our Get Talking Norwich survey if you haven't already. I also hope you've had the opportunity to engage with our corporate plan survey, available on the Get Talking Norwich platform, which closes on Thursday, so if you haven't, please do so. The corporate plan underlines what we do as a council and what our priorities should be, so we have undertaken a lot of work to promote the survey, for example on our social media platforms and through Citizen magazine, which gets sent to every household. Since we've introduced Get Talking Norwich, we've been pleased with the significant increase in engagement we've had, such as the doubling in levels of responses to our annual budget consultation. I was disappointed that the government recently declined to pass laws allowing local authorities to hold virtual or hybrid meetings, which worked excellently during the pandemic to encourage participation. Nonetheless, I'm pleased that right now work is underway in our Mancroft room, used for many committee meetings to improve accessibility and public engagement, including better microphones, videoing technology and hybrid tools. Work is also underway to look at the way that we make the best use of City Hall as a workplace and a public building. Of course, democratic engagement is underpinned by engagement in the election process. I'm pleased that we have successfully introduced auto-enrolment on the electoral register at UEA, meaning that far more students on site are now registered to vote. We recently successfully transitioned to online postal vote registration, and will review our communications ahead of the 2024 elections, given the ongoing frustration of voter ID. Of course, if you have ideas as to how we can do more, then please do feel free to contact me direct.
Thank you. Mr. Gosling, you're allowed one supplementary question. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I thank the councillor for that response. Within this topic, one particular item of concern which has been raised with me is the poor video quality of the recordings of meetings which have been uploaded to the internet. This includes the last uploaded full council meeting. Would the councillor look into ensuring that in such videos, all the councillors can be both heard and seen to an Apple standard?
Thank you. Councillor Stannard, would you please
I think you make a fair point in terms of visibility of councillors when speaking in the chamber, and I know there are other places, for example County Hall, which have a superior system. I will find out if there's anything we can do about it. Of course, we always do try and do the best we can within the resources we've got, but I will ask the question again.
Thank you. Now we move on to petitions. There have been no petitions received for this meeting. Item 4, question to Cabinet members. There are 27 questions from members of the Council to Cabinet members, of which notice has been given in accordance with provisions of Part 3 of the Constitution. A copy will be made available on the Council's website. Members who have asked questions are permitted to put a supplementary question to the Cabinet member. Question 1. Councillor Vaughan Thomas, do you have a supplementary question?
I've got a supplementary question, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Question 2, Councillor Suzanne, do you have a supplementary question?
No supplementary, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Question 3, Councillor Peake, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Councillor Giles, for your reply. The Real Living Wage campaign and the practical work this council has taken to lead it has led to over 6,000 workers now benefiting from higher wages. I know from my own personal experience the difference which the Real Living Wage can make. After working all my life on the minimum wage, I'm aware that the Real Living Wage campaign in Norwich is developing new areas to enhance the fight against poverty pay in the future. Can you talk further about this, please?
Thank you. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Councillor Peake, and it's very positive to hear about the real-life impact that payment of the real living wage has on employees in this city. Of course, Martin's is one of our real living wage employers, and that's fantastic to have. In terms of expansion to other areas, I think what the Real Living Wage campaign is now looking at in particular is living hours and how we can ensure, because it's all very well paying a real living wage, but if people don't have a guaranteed number of quantity of hours, then it doesn't generate the security a proper employment contract would. So I think that's going to be a significant area of focus over the coming months and years.
Thank you. So question 4, Councillor Fulton McAllister, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Yes, I do. So first of all, Councillor Giles, thank you very much for your answer. As the Cabinet member for this area, you may be aware that Riverside Leisure Centre runs several children's swimming lessons, including those that my new baby daughter attends. These are run at half the price of the private sector lessons, offering excellent value for money. Unfortunately, however, it's quite difficult to find information about these on the website, and I wanted to know what additional plans we had as a city council to try and make sure that all residents were aware of these lessons and to publicise the excellent services that we offer.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm glad to hear that you and Erin are finding the parent and baby sessions at Riverside of value. Since the mass closure of Shore Start centres a few years ago by the County Council, there has been a lack of affordable opportunities in the city for activities enabling parents to bond with their children and offering that sensory child development. In this context, I think such provision of activities in our local authority-owned leisure centres illustrates the important role local authorities continue to play in the sport and leisure sector. I think the provision of such activities in our local authority-owned leisure centres illustrates the important role the public sector continues to play.
Do you wish to? Going to adjourn the meeting briefly. We'll just hold people in the room for the time being. Giving an answer to Councillor Fulton.
Thank you, Matthew, for your supplementary question. I am glad to hear you and Erin are finding parent and baby sessions at Riverside of value. Since the mass closure of Shore Start centres a few years ago by the County Council, there has been a lack of affordable opportunities for activities enabling parents to bond with their children and offering sensory child development. In this context, I think such provision of activities in our local authority-owned leisure centres illustrates the important role local authorities continue to play in the sport and leisure sector. The new 5-year contract with Places Leisure to manage Riverside will ensure such affordable activities remain available for local families. With regards to accessibility and the design of the website, happy to engage with members and service users on how we can make that as accessible as possible to increase usage to the maximum. Thanks.
Thank you. Question 5, Councillor Maxans. And do you have a supplementary question again for Councillor Giles?
I'd like to thank Councillor Giles for his response to the question. I don't actually have a supplementary at this stage.
Thank you. Question 6, Councillor Packer, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Jones, for your reply. The issue of protecting private renters in this city is one which I know this council is committed to, but hugely hampered by the lack of support from government in abolishing Section 21. Hearing the government will only abolish when it is supposedly fixed, the courts and justice system seems to me and my constituents like a promise of jam tomorrow, when we need real action today. Can you give your views on what has happened and the impact upon Norwich renters? Thank you.
Thank you for supplementary, Councillor Packer. Yes, I've been waiting, we'll have since, I think it's April 2019, for the promises of reforms, and it's fortunately something this council has talked a lot about. I've brought motions myself, and I'm really pleased that Councillor Catt has brought one this evening. And it's something that actually we're talking about over 22% of our residents, and actually if we're not talking about this, if someone's not caring, because clearly Mr. Gomez isn't, that actually at least as councillors for Norwich we are. Impacting Norwich renters, I think life is getting harder and harder, and unless private renters are some of those who are suffering the most in this with rising prices. So I think until there's real reforms, it's only going to get more challenging for our renters. So we will continue to do as much as we can as a city council, and we hope that ultimately we will hopefully at the next election get a government that can deliver real reforms that will actually have an impact and change people's lives for the better.
Question 7, Councillor Driver, do you have a supplementary question?
No, Lord Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Question 8, Councillor Maguire, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. In view of the delays,
thank you for going to a supplementary question. Question 9, Councillor Carrington, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Lord Mayor. First of all, thank you, Councillor Stonehall, for your reply. As a trade unionist and shop steward for Unison, I have watched with pride the way in which the RMT has mobilised a public campaign to stop the ticket office closures across Britain, with over 750,000 people supporting this successfully. A better rail network, publicly owned and expanded, could connect and boost our city economy further still. So will you join me in both congratulating the local RMT on their success and continue to lobby government for the investment needed to further enhance the service for Norwich?
Thank you, Councillor Carrington. I absolutely will. I think the RMT's campaign against ticket office closures was absolutely brilliant. It was an exceptional campaign, and clearly it was a success with a massive participation from members of the public. And it just shows you the power of trade unions and what trade unions can achieve when they campaign. The RMT is an excellent example of that, And of course, it's really, really important that we, as you say, we continue to lobby government for the investment needed to further enhance services for Norwich. But actually everywhere, it's important for Norwich, it's important everywhere, because train services are an important part of carbon reduction, encouraging people to use public transport rather than a private car to get around. So it's really, really important that that investment takes place. We need there to be high quality, affordable, accessible public transport, including in rail. And as I say, with a Labour government, which hopefully we'll have next year, I look forward to a steady renationalisation of the railways and enhancement of services in Norwich, which is exactly what we need.
Thank you. Question 10, Councillor Kidman, do you have a supplementary question?
No, Lord Mayor, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 11, Councillor Pallett, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Lord Mayor. Firstly, thank you for your reply, Councillor Jones. We can all remember Suella Brown, the previous Home Secretary, horrifically stated that homeless people living in tents is a lifestyle choice. Here in Norwich, we're proud to be more joined up in our approach through building more sustainable council houses, setting up the multi-agency pathway scheme and working with St Martin's Housing to give housing solutions to people in need. Could you comment further on what we do differently? Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
I think what we do differently is, well, one of the things is our striving to do the best at what we do, particularly within the housing team. I'm really proud of the work at the moment, particularly around how we support people who are fleeing domestic abuse. We've got the housing team working, well, there's a council working towards the Darfur agreement. So, we are always looking for ways that we are making sure, particularly the people who are most vulnerable in our society are best supported, and a whole range of different groups that we're trying to make sure that we are providing appropriate support so that no one should be without a home.
Thank you. Question 12, Councillor Lubbock, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you for the response. I'm very pleased to hear that the grounds maintenance team have received praise and compliments from the sheltered housing tenants team. However, should the tenants have some complaints about how their money for the grounds maintenance is spent, would you welcome the feedback and learn from it to further improve the service?
Councillor Giles.
Yes, absolutely.
Short and sweet answer, thank you. Question 13, Councillor Francis, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, thank you. Thank you very much for your answer, Councillor Stannard. I appreciate the highly challenging financial climate councils operate in, but I fear that saying that the process is under review is scant consolation for residents, in particular on the Vengo Road, who regularly report litter, dog muck and other hazards. What can you say to reassure residents that they are getting value for money for their council tax?
Councillor Stannard.
As I say, the situation is under review, and we intend to progressively improve that service over time, and I think residents should be assured that that's something that I give a commitment that we are doing.
Question 14, Councillor Champion, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor, thank you. It is best practice to have clear metrics and strategic outcomes prior to starting a campaign like this that uses over £100,000 of public funds. To succinctly reiterate my original question, what metrics are actually put in place to measure the outcomes?
Councillor Stannard.
I'll contact you separately around that. That's not something that I can go through in a public meeting like this, but I can send you written information.
Thank you. Question 15, Councillor Catt, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Jones, for your response. I have had residents who have ended up hospitalised, even put on medication due to damp and mould within the home, so I'm well aware of the enhanced process, but we have seen these issues just continue to get worse. This is a process that has been in place for a while now, and We've also seen a recent report from the Housing Ombudsman into poorly performing landlords, which showed Norwich City Council had a maladministration rate of 100%. It's the highest in the country. Given that and the rise in complaints regarding mould, are you going to be looking at reviewing this process again? What else are you going to be doing to handle this?
Councillor Jones, would you give a reply, please?
Yes, would be the straight answer to it. Yes, I want to know more and understand more about the process, and it's something I've already been having discussions about. I think it is something from talking to colleagues at other councils that they have also seen in terms of increased reporting of it as well. And I don't think increased reporting still is, there is a problem there and it needs to be acknowledged, but I don't think we are the only council who's, from talking to other housing colleagues, that are seeing that, because there fortunately is more awareness that people should be reporting it, which I would encourage people to, and then we need to ensure that's dealt with robustly.
Thank you. Question 16, Councillor Young, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you for your response, Councillor Hampton. I'm pleased to know that information on the website will be reconsidered. Could you please keep me updated regarding the progress on this, including what assessment methods are used to determine readability and accessibility? Thank you.
Councillor Hampton.
Yes, of course. I work with colleagues who've got IT and website in their portfolio to make sure that those boxes ticked, but it's more widely that we do the website update. So thank you for your question.
Question 17, Councillor Hercules, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd like to thank Councillor Dias for his response. I'm very glad to know that permission has been granted for the surviving trees to be planted in the soil of the community garden at West Pottergate. In light of our climate emergency declaration and seeing that we need to increase tree cover in Norwich City, I would like to know what the Council is doing to ensure that in future, residents and community groups interested in planting trees can get a definite response as quickly as possible to minimise the risk of trees dying while they wait to hear back from the Council. Thank you.
Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'm disappointed that the Island Community Group had difficulties in securing permission at the pace they desired. We have introduced a streamlined process for community groups to gain access to take on permissions for managing individual green spaces like this. In terms of tree planting and our commitment to tree planting, we are planting 2,000 trees on our HRA land over the coming months, and we've also been successful with a government grant. I can't remember which the government grants have been successful with and which we're still waiting with, so I'm not going to tell you wrong, but I can get back to you with the details of that and how many of the quantity of trees secured.
Question 18, Councillor Fox, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you for getting back to us, Councillor Jones. Councillors were told when we previously asked a question to Council that these fire doors would be fitted in October. The Council has an expedited process for damp and mould, so why has fire safety not been expedited in a similar manner, and is this putting Norwich lives at risk?
Councillor Jones.
I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to give you incorrect information, so I'd like to follow up in more detail after the meeting. One thing I can say is there's been a lot of work going into testing around products before we purchase them to make sure we are getting things that are of the highest standard, because actually don't want to take any risks around this, and ensuring we've got the right contractors with the right levels of training, because ensuring these are fitted correctly as well is really crucial, because the way they're fitted impacts on their effectiveness. So these have been things that there's also been significant demand across the country in terms of this resource as well. So it's not as quick as we may have hoped, but it's about doing it right, and that's the thing in the long term for our residents to be safe. But I'll get some more detailed information. That's the bit that I can tell you from memory at the moment.
Thank you. Question 19, Councillor Haynes, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you, Lord Mayor. And thanks for the answer, Councillor Jones. Just to say that I think this has been reduced without any explanation really to members and to residents what's going on. So what's the plan for making sure that board members and residents in blocks where they would really benefit from the estate aesthetics programme, what's going on, what's the plan for fixing their unsafe homes?
I will check in terms of the numbers that have been reduced. I'm not 100% sure. But in terms of, I've actually asked recently, it's an area that I haven't covered recently, in terms of needing an update and understanding where we are with the programme. So I'm happy to provide you some up-to-date information. I'll get briefed on that.
Question 20, Councillor Shearer, do you have a supplementary question?
Well, beyond asking for an update about the progress of this, no, but thank you very much for the answer.
Thank you. Question 21, as Councillor Worley has sent his apologies, there will be no supplementary question. Question 22, Councillor Osborne, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thank you for response to Councillor Kendrick. Do you agree that Norwich Labour Party should repay £10,000 COVID small business relief grant to the City Council, as other Labour parties have done?
I believe that Green Party MP Caroline Lucas actually also received a £17,900 grant under the COVID Job Retention Scheme for her staff. Do you think she should pay it? Can I, for the benefit of clarity, point out that this City Council assessed and administered the COVID-19 grants process to businesses and eligible organisations entirely within the rules as laid down by Parliament. This included political parties of which the Norwich Labour Party was one. What I think you are missing is the very fact that thousands of businesses and organisations were effectively stopped from operating during the pandemic, and the risk of mass economic collapse and unemployment was significant unless that funding had been provided rapidly. This council, like all others, played a very important role in the successful administration of those grants to support them. They did this within the rules and the law was followed. The officers and staff who did this work during the most difficult time in recent British history should be thanked and recognised for their efforts, rather than false and unfair assertions being propagated. Thank you.
Question 23, Councillor Galway, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you. Yes, I do. I'm not sure who I address it to.
If you address it, then it'll be up to the leader to decide who will answer it.
Thank you. So I've spoken to the monitoring officer, and she's confirmed there's no prejudice in the motion to this question. So I'd really like you to ask you to answer it. You say that you can't answer it because it prejudices the answer to the motion to be presented to council this evening. Can you confirm, therefore, what the council's doing about the collapse of One Norwich and the issue?
I'm happy to answer this. So from my understanding, from the assurances I've been given, this is about the service will be transitioning. This isn't about the service ending, and I actually really struggle, and I would come to that in the motions later tonight, about actually these are services people use and are anxious about, and we need to be very clear they're moving from one provider who was commissioned to provide them, and there is a new identified provider. So services are going to continue, so I'm happy with that.
Question 24, Councillor Calvert, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you. Disabled users accessing Slow Bottom Park from Balfour Avenue are being asked to take 2/3 of a mile diversion, including a stretch on the busy Drayton Road, as the council has declined to act on a discriminatory barrier placed there. Does this apparent inconsistency not call for a general policy on these type of discriminatory barriers?
Councillor Giles.
I'm happy to look into what the issue that you've raised between Balfour Avenue and Slow Bottom Park and get back to you and all councillors in due course.
Question 25, Councillor Price, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Lord Mayor. Thank you. Thank you for the answer. And thank you for your reassuring words that the council will continue its good work. To help reinforce the sentiment with measurable evidence, will the Cabinet member instigate an impact assessment and share the results with me.
I'm not quite sure impact of what, given that the service is being commissioned and a new provider is picking it up.
To provide an impact assessment that backs up the words that you've said that we will continue to be just fine with the great work we're doing. Could you do an impact assessment here at this council so I can get that assurance that what you're saying is going to manifest?
I think what I will do is I will reach out to the ICB and discuss and clarify that what service they are commissioning and confirm that it's going to be like for like, but that's the assurance I've got. But I will confirm that, and I feel if it's a like for like service, services change and transition within the NHS and get different. I've worked in stuff that has changed who's commissioning it, but the same outcomes are requested are required as part of that. So I will double check and confirm that, in which case that will be the service that's provided, but I will confirm with the ICB.
Question 26, Councillor Viv Thomas, do you have a supplementary question?
No supplementary question, thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'm just going to go to my left to get a So, less than 30 minutes have elapsed. Therefore, question 27, Councillor Herkinen, do you have a supplementary question to your second question?
Thank you very much for the answer. I would like to know whether the answer said that there is no intent to consider additional products for recycling. And I just wonder how the council plans to improve recycling rate if we don't increase the amount of waste that we consider for recycling. Thank you.
And I think the answer deals with the new requirements by the government for increasing the range of materials which are recycled. And of course, we're already ahead of the game. We're already recycling most of those items. So actually, I'm quite confident that we'll be able to comply with the new requirements of the government. I think you also need to remember that we need to work in partnership. We have a recycling partnership with all the other councils in the county, and we need to work with them to improve recycling rates. It's not something that we would do alone, but clearly we're not complacent. We will continue to try to do that, but along with most other councils, we seem to have hit a bit of a plateau, and we need to understand why that is the case. And of course, I would say again, you know, the opposition can criticise us, but the only comparison we have of what a Green Party in charge of a council would deliver in terms of recycling is Brighton and Hove. And we know that it is absolutely dismal. You know, basically, if a Green Party in charge of a council can get one thing right, it ought to be recycling.
Right, that's questions over. We now move on to item 8B, which is our second motion, but the first one we'll be taking, and that is encouraging local councils to choose climate-friendly banks. I call upon Councillor Herkiner to move motion 8B. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much. The motion I propose asks the Council to take a stance on the role of the banking sector in financing the climate crisis. We have just seen the hottest month of July on record, and then the hottest August, followed by the hottest September and the hottest October. We are on track for 2023 to be the hottest year ever. We've seen lethal heat waves suffocating Europe this year. We've seen wildfires destroying entire towns and villages. We've seen floods and storms threatening people's lives and livelihoods in the UK and across the globe. According to the UN, people in Africa, South Asia, South and Central America and small island states are 15 times more likely to die from climate disasters. We are facing not merely an environmental crisis, but also a crisis of social and racial injustice. In 2015, world leaders agreed at COP21 in Paris to limit global warming to levels deemed relatively safe for human existence. In the 8 years since, we have seen unspeakable levels of destruction and pollution. Global greenhouse gas emissions have continued to rise. Oil, gas and coal have been burned in ever greater quantities. The path that we are now on sees us hurtling towards catastrophic climate breakdown, the annihilation of entire ecosystems, and an estimated 5 million deaths attributed to climate change between now and 2050. Dirty money is greasing the system responsible for this destruction. Since the Paris Agreement was signed, the world's 60 biggest banks have poured over 4.3 trillion pounds into fossil fuel industries. This is almost double the UK's annual GDP. Unimaginably huge sums of money are keeping alive the polluting companies that drive species across the world to their extinction and turn the world into an uninhabitable hothouse. None of the high-street banks have a clean state, but there are clearly different shades of dirty. Among the banks operating in the UK, Barclays stand out for its particularly despicable record on climate and basic human rights. Barclays, the same bank that refused to withdraw operations from South Africa under apartheid, the same bank that holds £1.3 billion worth of shares in companies whose weapons, components and military technology have been used in unlawful violence against Palestinians. That same bank has been Europe's largest funder of fossil fuels for 7 years running. Barclays pays lip service to the climate emergency and net zero, and then turns around and pours $1 billion more into climate-wrecking industries. From 2016 to 2022, Barclays has given an eye-watering total of £150 billion to companies active across the fossil fuel life cycle. That is over 10 times more than its competitors NatWest, just over £13 billion, and Lloyds, just under £12 billion, the other two banks currently providing banking services to local governments in the UK. Unlike most other UK high street banks, Barclays continues to fund even the most polluting of fossil fuels, including offshore oil and Arctic oil and gas. These investments threaten to wipe out fragile marine and Arctic ecosystems. Barclays is the only major British bank not to have taken any steps to restrict investments in new oil and gas. Since the Paris Agreement, Barclays has given over £44 billion to key oil, gas and coal companies expanding fossil fuel exploitation. £44 billion, that is 1.5 times the amount of money the Labour leadership pledged to spend yearly on tackling climate change if it comes to power in the next election, £28 billion. Barclays invested £44 billion in new oil and gas alone. That's £44 billion locking in future emissions and supercharging climate breakdown. Civil society organizations and the public are no longer prepared to accept this madness. Many now challenge dirty banks to clean up their act. Those who can have started moving their money. Christian Aid, one of the UK's largest development charities, has just cut ties with Barclays over its fossil fuel finance record and weak commitment to future improvements. The Church of England has formally challenged Barclays to cease its investments in fossil fuels. National Trust members have proposed that the charity close its account with the bank. A Greenbelt Festival has just announced that it moves its finances away from Barclays. Students across the UK, including at UEA, have been demanding that the universities stop banking with Barclays. Citizens have also started demanding that their local council switches to a climate-friendly and ethical bank, or at least to one that doesn't top the charts of arms and fossil fuel finance. We've just heard from a resident that Norwich City Council should not have business with a bank that enables unlawful violence against Palestinians. Over 130 people have signed a recently launched petition by Norwich Friends of the Earth asking local councils to stop banking with Barclays when their contracts are up for renewal next year to protest the bank's fossil fuel investments. We know the number of providers of banking services to the local government sector is limited and none is ideal. But what is more, current procurement legislation does not even allow local councils to take into account the makeup and associated carbon footprint of a bank's investments when choosing their banking partner. This means councils are unable to take carbon reduction into account in any meaningful way when procuring banking services, and they continue to hand over citizens' money to banks with an absolutely appalling record on climate and basic human rights. This is why this motion asks the leader of the council to lobby the current and possible future governments to review the existing procurement legislation. If we are serious about the climate emergency, if we are serious about net zero, it must be possible for local councils to look at the bank's climate record when making procurement decisions and to at least opt for the lesser evil thereby making it clear to these banks that financing climate breakdown can and will lose their customers. Banks need to know that elected representatives are watching. That's why this motion asks that the leader of the council writes to all major banks to highlight concerns about fossil fuel investments and to urge them to divest. Finally, while this council is constrained by current procurement legislation when it comes to choosing a banking partner, Norwich residents aren't. This council can't currently choose the bank based on its ethical and climate record, but Norwich residents can. We should let them know what banks are doing with their money. There are excellent resources out there that can help people find out about the ethical and climate record of their bank. Switch It Green, Make My Money Matter, Bank.Green. We should let residents know about these resources so they can make informed choices about who they trust their money with. This is why this motion asks that the council signpost such resources to residents on the council's website and social media, and it'd also be great to see this reference in the Citizen magazine. In conclusion, I wish I could propose a motion to you that simply asks that we stop banking with Barclays, as the earlier speaker and the 130 people who have signed the Friends of the Earth petition demand. It is that simple. Any other bank you could bank with won't be as bad for the climate and human rights as Barclays. Current legislation doesn't allow us to do what concerns citizens' demand. The best we can do under the law is to demand legislative change, to tell banks that we pay attention to their investment record, and to encourage Norwich residents to consider carefully whom they give their money to. I hope you'll agree with me that we should do at least that. Greta Thunberg told us that we must act as if our house is on fire, because it is. We know who is paying for barrel after barrel of fuel fanning the flames of this fire. Let's do what we can to hold them to account. Thank you.
I call upon Councillor Champion to second item 8B. You have 3 minutes.
I formally second this, but reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. I'm now going to move to group spokespersons. Councillor Kendrick, will you respond on behalf of the Labour Group, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Well, of course, I dealt with most of the points regarding the legal situation this council is faced in this matter earlier on in the question, so I don't propose to repeat what I said then. But I have a great deal of sympathy with the proposer of this motion. I do resent the laws passed by this Conservative government, which restricts the ability of local government to act in an ethical manner. But of course, I do appreciate that Barclays is bad, but you find a regular difficulty finding a really good bank about the place. But at the end of the day, I do think that is a choice that each local authority should be making by itself. And we shouldn't have a situation where the government dictates this in the way that they are. So I have a great deal of sympathy for the motion, and I'm sure we should be voting in favour. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Love, would you like to respond on behalf of the Lib Dem Group, please?
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. We know that economic growth can no longer be pursued at the expense of climate change and environmental degradation. However, across the UK, councils under the control of all the major political parties collectively invest nearly 10 billion in the oil, gas and coal industries through local and government pension funds on behalf of nearly 7 million pension holders. So there's also the indirect investment where local authorities select major banks as their bankers, who in turn invest heavily in the fossil fuel industry. Both direct and indirect investment in fossil fuels is fueling climate change and air pollution, contradicting local, national and international commitments to climate change, to tackle climate change. This investment is also putting members' pensions in jeopardy, as fossil fuel investments now pose a dangerous long-term financial risk to investors. Regardless of the narrative that oil-rich Arab nations may be peddling, the future is not fossil fuels, but green energy investment to help us reach a net zero world. It is obvious to anyone with common sense that such fossil fuel investments are contradictory to our climate change and environmental policies. Then surely we must embark on a journey to divest ourselves of such immoral investments. The divestment movement began in about 2018, and I'm pleased to say that the Lib Dems have strongly supported it in earnest since then, with Layla Moran and Vera Hobhouse MPs being particularly vocal. Ed Davey, the leader of the Lib Dems, introduced the bold policy that stated that all pension funds should have to divest by 2035, and all companies with fossil fuel assets be removed from the London Stock Exchange by 2045. So I'd like to see other political parties commit to that. So what can this council do to ensure that every pound that is spent on tackling climate change is not wiped out by a pound being invested in fossil fuels? Well, firstly, by acknowledging that it's not just Barclays that the target for the divestment, but all the major banks. And that secondly, that what action is advocated should be done legally with reasonable targets set over a reasonable period of time. And that means not the breaking of any windows, no gluing up of any doors, but representation through the local government association and through pressure on the government. What we need is help in making more ethical decisions, overcoming the regulatory obstacles and reforming the procurement process by setting strict green criteria for contracts. We also need to encourage our partners to do the same. I really think it's unrealistic in item 4 to demand banks stop immediately all investments across the fossil fuel life cycle. This has to be a transition and it will take time considering where the main banks currently are. Through advanced data capture and analysis, we can enhance our monitoring and reporting on the impact of the Council's spending and investments on the climate and the environment. We also need to lobby our representative on the Norfolk Local Government Pension Board, and I believe it is the leader of the Council. It has been done before and was largely unsuccessful, as the Conservatives have far more representatives on the board than any other parties. But slowly the landscape is changing and we should try again to lobby as a group of district councils unhappy with the current fossil fuel investments. North Norfolk, a Liberal Democrat controlled authority, along with Broadland, a Lib Dem and Green controlled local authority, are hopeful allies. Now is the time to start to end fossil fuel investment, and that is because we have declared a climate emergency, and divesting in fossil fuel investment is a relatively easy way to combat climate change. Divestment has popular support. YouGov polling in 21 found that 65% of voters supported the investment of pension funds in renewable energy products. Selling in strength is a term for selling shares when the market is still rising. So if it's done now, you can get good returns. If you sell diverse yourself of investments now, you have more money to take up the investment in renewables. Let's make a start and explain what we're doing and why we're doing it to the electorate. That way, they can decide themselves if they should do the same. Thank you.
Councillor Price, are there any other members who indicate?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll try to be quick. I welcome the work that this council undertook in identifying that we had oversight in not looking closely at Treasury Management and subsequently setting up the Treasury Management Committee. And I very much welcome that. And we've heard the strong arguments as to why this council needs to make a public statement to the people of Norwich about the state of banking and how that is detrimental to the future existence of life on this planet, and that is not to understate the issue. But the way the council can look at this in much greater detail is to really beef up the elements of the ESG parts of its policies, particularly through the Treasury Management Committee's work. And we haven't actually undertaken that ahead of the next cycle, and I would offer colleagues the opportunity to really sit down and talk about how we can improve the ESG criteria of our work so that we can look at the rules that the government set that set the policy that we need to set. So I will write to the Cabinet Member for Resources about this after the meeting to see if he will undertake a meeting. We need to look at how we also borrow money, and we also need to look at how we lend. So I understand this, that there is only a certain amount of banks that can do whole council processing, and there are millions of transactions going through this council every year. So there is some limitation in who you can bank with. But we have heard that Barclays is twice as bad as the other ones we could be banking with. So it is something we should consider. However, we need to really think about where we borrow our money long term and who we lend to, and how they use our money going forward. Because the only way we can really impact businesses and the ethics beyond legislative control by governments is how we choose to spend it as individuals and as a large and powerful collective that we are here in Norwich. There is a reputational risk to continuing with Barclays and to ignore that situation and to not beef up our ESG element. So I would strongly suggest that we really look at that for our TM policy going forward. The pension contract is up for renewal, and I support Councillor Lovett's call for working with other districts to really push for a change in the pension fund. Again, that's the future income and earnings of retired staff. Many of the staff, have we surveyed them? Do they want their money going into fossil fuels? So that's worth considering. Climate change is on the risk register as well. So we understand it. We have it there. It's something that's getting worse. We're seeing the floodings. We've seen what happened to Hemsby over the weekend. This is only going to get worse. Okay, and we need to consider: are we a part of that? Are we accelerating the situation through our financial decisions? So, thank you for listening. It seems that there is support across the chamber for the motion, but let's go and do some work in the Treasury Management Committee to follow it up with even more action. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Price. Councillor Fulton McAllister, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hirschner, for bringing this motion. I fully support this motion, and I think actually we should be going further. I know the limitations in why we can't. Ultimately, it's not just the council, it's also organisations that the council has very close relationships with. For example, NCSL has different rules and regulations in place which are impacted and which we should also be looking to uphold the values that are espoused on all sides of this chamber. There's also other companies that the council has set up which is bound by those different rules and regulations, where we are legally bound to deliver the best result for the shareholder rather than being able to consider ethical frameworks that those organisations may want to engage with. Ultimately, we've got a situation where in this country we do not have the strength of organisations like credit unions that in other countries, for example in Australia, as my good colleagues will tell me about in a moment, in Australia credit unions are big, powerful organisations where lots of people use them to provide mortgages on their houses. We should have the option to at least look into community lending alternatives and perhaps leave that, but the current legislation completely restricts us in doing so. So I'm really pleased that this has come forward, and I hope a future government will be able to change the legislation, and we will certainly be lobbying any government of any colour for that.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Sanders.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Councillor Fulton McAllister is absolutely right. In all my working years in Australia, Sue was the same, never had a bank account. We had all our accounts with credit unions, and they supplied us with our mortgages as well. And as they were owned by members, then they were very, very ethical financial institutions. And it would be nice to see In the future, of course, the power and influence of credit unions being expanded here in Britain.
Thank you. Any other members who wish to speak on this item? No? Thank you. In which case, Councillor Champion, you had reserved your right to speak. So.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's reassuring to hear Councillor Kendrick say that he has sympathy, but we need more than sympathy. We need leadership. And what we need is for the council to, if they, and I'm reassured that the councillors across the chamber have said they're going to support this motion. And I look forward to them making very public statements to their own leadership and to our government, not just a quiet little letter, but to be very public, to be very vocal about the importance of this issue. Often when we pass motions in this council chamber, they then seem to blow to dust and we hear very little more about them. And I would very much look forward to hearing about the council's work, putting pressure on their own leadership within Keir Starmer. I'd like to hear Keir Starmer take a strong position on this. We need to have leadership. We live in a climate emergency. I genuinely live in fear for the future, for the well-being of my children. And I've been told by members of this chamber that I don't understand bureaucracy. But as I told the people who were standing outside chanting earlier, I do understand ethics. And this is an ethical issue. And at its core, politics is ethics. What happens, I think, is a bit like teachers who get caught up in the exam factory of marking papers. I think councillors get caught up in the bureaucratic nuances of systems. What we need is system change. We need for a united council here today to pass this motion, to write to the leaders of the government and to the leaders of all major parties, and to make a very strong statement. I look forward to seeing this in writing and in the media, and I hope this isn't brushed under the carpet like so many other things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members who wish to add anything before I invite Councillor Hercules to sum up? Would you like to respond now, please?
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to see their support for this motion. If other councillors have ideas of other things we should be doing, and they've shared them, we should do all of this. It's not either or, obviously. It's great that we come together on this, and we need to be a lot more ambitious. There's a quote I'd like to end on, because I think it captures the situation quite well by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who said, "Climate activists are sometimes depicted as dangerous radicals, but the truly dangerous radicals are the countries that are increasing the production of fossil fuels." And I think it's safe to add, thanks to this list, investing in new fossil fuel infrastructure is moral and economic madness. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to the vote. If all those members in favour, please indicate. That is unanimous. Thank you. That is carried. Right, motion 8C, UEA night bus. I call upon Councillor Lubbock to move 8C.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Norwich is home to over 17,000 students, some of whom live on the campus and some of whom live near the university in the western part of the city. It is this group of students that we're advocating for, a night bus that would take them safely and swiftly to their destination in the hours between midnight and 4 a.m. First Bus previously offered a late night service on the 25-26 Blue Line route, and a very valuable late night service, but one, not only a very valuable one, but one which became unviable during the preliminary stage of the COVID-19 pandemic. Norfolk County Council has recently secured 50 million from the Department of Transport to use on improving services, including more evening services and weekend services. So it seems particularly fitting to use a small part of that 50 million funding, and I think it's just 0.1% of the total budget, towards reinstating this late night service on a trial basis for a short-term calendar year from midnight to 4 a.m, Monday to Saturday. and once an hour during term time. This trial would allow time for a more sustainable funding solution to be found. I think it's particularly mean to exclude this group of important residents, to leave them out of the opportunity to experience improved bus services while they're studying in Norwich. This UEA night bus would be a win-win for all involved. Local residents would experience less disturbance from students walking home. Students, especially women, would feel safer on a bus. And our nightlife businesses would benefit from the students' prolonged presence in the city centre. There is currently an ongoing campaign for the reinstatement of the night bus from the UEA Students' Union, and we've got some representatives here today. It has received public support from David Maguire, the UEA Vice-Chancellor, from Norfolk Police through Sergeant Mike Larkin, the UEA Student Union Council members, and Clive Lewis MP. I hope that this evening we can add the support of this City Council to that list, to work in partnership to persuade the County Council to review the decision on the funding to allow the trial of the UEA night bus to go ahead. In facilitating the trial, evidence from usage statistics and ticket revenue raised can be used to investigate a more long-term solution, which is badly needed. Students are an important part of our community and of our economy, and as such deserve to be included in the opportunity to have safe, sustainable transport. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Ackroyd to second the item 8C.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Formally second and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Now I'd like to invite group spokespersons. Councillor Hampton, do you want to respond on behalf of the Labour Group, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Lubbock for presenting this motion tonight. And I also especially want to thank the UEA Students' Union officers who are here for leading such an engaging and effective campaign on this issue so far. I'm really pleased to be able to speak on this motion and outline Labour support, both in my capacity as a Cabinet member leading on transport issues and also as a University Ward Councillor. First and foremostly, a night bus service would provide a safe, affordable option for students to get home late at night, in turn meaning that they can make the most of the Norwich nighttime economy without fearing for their safety or being deterred from heading out in the first place. It's a service I was able to benefit from when I was a student at UEA, both when I was living on the campus itself and then in the wider community after that, and my student experience would no doubt have been different, probably worse, without it. It's understandable why there had to be some sort of pause in providing the service during COVID for economic or especially on the public health grounds, but as business as usual returned in the city, unfortunately so did many of the safety concerns that students can face. And as a council, we will continue using whatever levers we can to alleviate such concerns and enhance the safety of students and, of course, others who want to enjoy what Norwich has to offer at night. Sorry, just turn my iPad off. There we go. But this includes, among many other things, using licensing powers available to us, working with the police and other partners in the nighttime economy, and adding our voice to campaigns like this one, which call on other authorities to step up and act too where they need to. To give some examples, some members will remember that last year my University Ward colleagues, Councillors Jones and Fulton McAllister, passed a motion supporting a range of practical measures to tackle drink spiking in the city. In recent months, this council has lent its support to a campaign to save the SOS bus, which operates on Prince Wales Road, and University Ward councillors are campaigning for Norfolk County Council to reinstate street lighting overnight on key routes near campus that tend to be used by students. We're also committed to continue working and campaigning more widely to secure affordable, convenient public transport in the city. Labour Group has this civic year already brought forward motions to outline our vision for a truly affordable bus network in Norwich, as well as a highways arrangement with the county, which would increase our say on transport matters but directly affect our residents. As I've highlighted before in this chamber, the Labour Party is already committed to the biggest overhaul of our bus system in 40 years, devolving powers to local areas so they can influence bus routes and set fares at affordable rate. And a last point, as Councillor Lubbock mentioned, and especially speaking as a University Ward Councillor, I think the reinstatement of a night bus service would have benefits for the wider community, especially that between the campus and city centre along this route. A later running bus service would no doubt be useful to residents on this side of the city, beyond just students who want or need to be travelling home later, as currently possible by bus. And yes, noise later at night as students walk back to campus or their homes nearby is something frequently raised with us as local councillors. Though, as always, to caveat that and be clear that it's a real minority of students, especially elsewhere in the city. It's certainly not a problem exclusively exhibited by students, but nonetheless it can have a really big impact on local residents, and that's including other students. A reduction in footfall through residential areas because students can complete more of their journey by bus is likely to help mitigate this issue, and it's a co-benefit that's been discussed between residents, student union officers and councillors at recent Norwich West Safer Neighbourhood Action Panel meetings. And I know myself and Councillor Sands and others were able to lend our support to the reinstatement of the service there. So to conclude, the Labour Group will certainly be voting in favour of this tonight. Thank you to everyone who brought forward this motion and has been involved in driving forward this campaign. We're more than happy to support the actions here that would hopefully help secure the funding needed to make this a reality. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Calvert, would you respond on behalf of the Green Group, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to all those involved tonight in bringing this motion to us. When I sat down to consider our response to this motion, I had a slight issue. My issue was that there are just so many benefits to high quality public transport in our city that I could probably talk all night on the topic, but I won't. I promise my colleagues that I'll try and keep this brief. The return of night buses to and from the UEA will keep students safe on their journeys home. It will enable people to spend more time and more money in our city centre, allowing our nighttime economy to employ more local people, allowing people from the city to see bands and buildings of the university, and it will keep those returning late at night from disturbing the sleep of their neighbours on the route. More generally, high-quality public transport that, importantly, people can rely on reduces our over-reliance on private vehicles, an over-reliance that becomes a financial burden at a time when living costs are high, an over-reliance that puts pressure on parking, leading to obstructed pavements and rutted verges, an over-reliance that leads to congested roads and higher pollution. Anything we can do to allow people a meaningful choice over how they travel is a good thing, and a return of the night bus would certainly be a step in the right direction. I hope we can all support this motion.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to speak on this? Councillor Mike Sands, and then Councillor Jones, Councillor Stoobley and Councillor Fulton McAllister.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This was certainly quite a hot topic at our last SNAP meeting we had in the west of the city, and I dare say it will come up again. Earlier this month I was interviewed by one of the journalists newly returned from accoutrement leave, I might add, by Radio Norfolk, and then again by a media student at Newark on the night bus topic. I think the big question is, why was it ever cut in the first place? And one thing we must keep in mind as well, which makes the night bus increasingly viable, is the fact that First Buses have acquired, about 17 new electric buses, which could be used on a night bus route at greatly reduced cost over diesel, with, of course, less pollution as well.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Thank you so much for bringing this motion, and I think it really serves, when we're talking about something we're asking the county to do, again it's about safety at night. And I think we've had so many conversations about street lighting over the years that there's and I'm always shocked by the lack of understanding about the impact street lighting has on the sense of safety in the city. And the night bus is part of the same thing. It's about being able to get home and feel confident, particularly as, for women out at night, but applies for all genders, but you need those things, the night bus, street lights, things like that. We need to feel safe in our city, and those are part of it, and there's something county can provide, but I sadly don't think they understand, as the administration there, they don't understand the needs of the city, sadly.
Thank you. Councillor Stu.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Lubbock, for bringing this motion and to everyone who's spoken in favour of it. In my previous role as Chair of Licensing in this chamber, we heard from the police about the number of people trying to leave the city late at night and not able to get taxis. So therefore, an improvement in the bus service, our regular bus service out of the city centre, will be a much great improvement to the safety of people in the city late, and especially those who work late in the city and need to get home safely. Thank you.
Thank you. I could just remind members to make sure their phones are on silent, please. Councillor Fonson-McAllister.
Yeah, it doesn't undo it.
Councillor Fonson-McAllister.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So, unsurprisingly, I am in support of this motion. Again, I wish that it could go further, but obviously council restrictions about only doing what we have powers within this authority to do apply. Ultimately, however, what a number of the opposition members have said about previous motions apply with this one. We need system change. And what a future Labour government has promised, and I want every councillor in this chamber to hold us to account over, is that there is a proposal that local authorities will be given powers to start their own publicly owned bus services, to reinstate cancelled routes and to set affordable fares. And ultimately, if it is a local authority-owned bus service, then it's going to be serving the interests of our residents. This is something which I know my whole group will be supportive of trying to implement. And ultimately, I would hope that every councillor in this chamber works together to try to ensure that we get this off the ground in the next 5 years of the Labour government, if that is achieved.
Thank you. Any other members wish to speak on this item? Thank you. Councillor Lubbock, would you sum up, please?
Yes, it's been good to hear such enthusiastic response to this motion, and I agree that it was a hot topic at recent SNAP meetings, and it was good that the Students' Union have taken it further with this campaign. It was cut, Mike, because it was during COVID when students were studying remotely, so you didn't, and also you couldn't go out. So it was inevitable that it failed at that time. And so that's why it's really important to reinstate it, because life is more or less back to normal now. But I think it's really important that we also know that taxis are more difficult to get now and obviously more expensive. It's really important that we do give students the opportunity to, as we say, have good public transport at affordable rates and have a reliable service. So I hope that we can put further pressure on the county council, ask all our county councillors for the city to somehow make their voices heard. And we know that there are difficulties with the county not being very democratic in the decisions that it's taken about transport in Norwich, but let's hope that our voice is heard clearly and do whatever we can to get this UEN night bus reinstated. And thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll now move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So that's carried. So we now move on to item 8A, motion private rented housing. An amendment to motion 8A has been received from Councillor Jones, which has been circulated. Councillor Catt has indicated that he is willing to accept this amendment. If no other member objects, the amendment will become part of the substantive motion. Looking around for objections, I don't see any, so no member has objected, that's agreed. So I call upon Councillor Catt to move item 8A as amended. Thank you.
Thank you. Home is the centre of all life, and it's our best frontline defence against external catastrophes, but unfortunately here in the UK we seem to have forgotten forgotten this, and private renters face the brunt of a housing market which is completely lost its way and is completely unfit for purpose. And getting to allow each and every one of us to really make, and achieve our full potential and achieve social justice. We have to start with a warm, secure and affordable home. The average rent for a property in Norwich is £1,486, and private renters continue to spend a higher proportion of their household income on rent compared to all other tenures. We are really reaching a crisis in this country and in Norwich. Rents are rising all across the UK, while incomes stagnate and are cut in real terms for lots of people in the public sector. In addition to these rises in our own city, many people are forced out of the places that they've grown up in, especially in places like London and the South East. And this puts even greater pressure on the housing markets of other cities and other areas of the country as well. But with prices this high, we would think that there would be higher standards in the market with well-insulated, well-equipped and well-maintained homes on offer. That's not the case, and I say that as a private renter myself. Private renters continue to spend the highest proportion of their household income on rent. Meanwhile, a significantly higher proportion of private rented sector dwellings are estimated to fail the decent home standard in nearly all regions. Even worse, the private rented sector has a higher proportion of properties deemed unsafe by the Housing, Health and Safety Rating System with a Category 1 hazard than any other tenure. And those are the hazards that are considered the most serious, for example, where there's the possibility of death or serious injury. Landlords can kick tenants out on the street for no reason, through horrific no-fault evictions. This has created a culture with tenants of not wanting to raise issues with landlords, not wanting to challenge unfair rent increases, and often allowing landlords to take advantage of their tenants. Protection against unfair evictions is also incredibly weak. The private rented market is a key example of market failure, a market that is incapable of regulating itself, but one that has had shockingly low levels of government intervention and a significant imbalance between the rights of tenants and landlords, with the former being the one that often loses out in this situation. There's a history as to how we got here. The housing market didn't used to look like this. In 1980, the Housing Act was brought in by Margaret Thatcher, which really shifted the balance and gave a lot more rights to landlords, taking them away from tenants. And we also had the introduction of right to buy that has put even more pressure on the private rented market, and has meant that it's no longer a choice that people can make because they want a more flexible lifestyle, but instead it's a necessity. People are forced into a market with incredibly expensive homes, ones that aren't well tamed, ones that aren't well equipped, ones that aren't well insulated, and with poor rights as well. If you look at the body of the motion, there's lots and lots of recommendations in there for things that the government can do to change the housing market, because they need to completely shift the entire market. We can't tinker around the edges anymore. A few headlines for that are ending no-fault evictions, the introduction of rent controls in the UK, which is a measure that's been led on by the SNP and Green government up in Scotland, as well as extending the decent home standard to the private rental sector and giving proper funding to local authorities for enforcement with legal aid to tenants wanting to take rogue landlords to court. The Renters Reform Bill has been a small step in this direction, mainly in seeking to end no-fault evictions, but it's far from perfect. It's filled with loopholes and it's significantly undermined by the lack of commitment to additional resource being put into the court system and into local authorities for enforcement of these new rules, and also potentially risking people's access to access homelessness services as well. So I really do hope that we as a council can call on the government to, one, go ahead with the Renters Reform Bill, but significantly improve it as well. But there are also significant things that we can do as a council at our level to improve rights for renters, and that we can publish advice on eviction law. We can really use our licensing powers as well to ensure that we're licensing all landlords in the city and getting landlords to agree to a code of conduct. and a whole host of measures that I hope everyone will support. I won't take up any more of your time, but I do want to thank Councillor Jones for your thoughtful amendments to this motion as well.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Haynes to second the motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I won't speak very long because I'm confident everyone in this chamber is going to vote for this motion, because I think we all really see the value of making sure that people who rent their homes privately have safe, secure, affordable places to live. It says in the motion that we are at a housing crisis, and in some ways, frankly, we're beyond a housing crisis at this point. The points to which the housing market has reached, like, I just can't believe it sometimes anymore. Something that came up when I was looking at this motion is how the rising rents and the situation where people are at the minute in Norwich having to literally bid over what is advertised for a rent, that opens up all kinds of issues here. This is where we really need to do everything we can on licensing, on trying to bring down rents across Norwich. Because if you're a single parent, if you're somebody who's barely got enough money to afford to rent at the actual market rent, and you go to your viewing and say, well, we could offer it to you, but somebody else already offered market rate this morning, what could you do? Can you pay us up front? No, the vast majority of renters cannot afford to pay up front. They can't afford to pay more than advertised. And we are allowing landlords to effectively scalp tenants as a city, as a country, because we are allowing this to happen. Obviously, there's lots of stuff we need to do to fix at a national level. That renters reform bill will go a long way, otherwise reference, it is not perfect. But I always like to focus on what we can do positively at this council. Focus a little bit on the Airbnb market. If we can, and there are powers where we can try and do this through HMO licensing to radically reduce the amount of Airbnbs in our city. Yes, there are benefits to the local economy, but there are also benefits to our residents in being able to find an affordable place to live in the city that they have perhaps grown up in, that they want to raise their children in, that they want to retire in, having lived there all their life. And that is more important than a few Airbnbs. We need to be much tougher licensing. And often you hear people say here, oh, well, there are plenty of good landlords out there, we don't need to do this. Well, good landlords won't mind. If there are people out there who are genuinely good landlords, who are genuinely fair on their tenants, they won't mind being able to sign up to a licence that says that they're doing things that they're already doing, because they're already doing them. It's only going to tackle the people who aren't doing them, the people we actually need to. Because this is all in aid of protecting our tenants. If landlords can't afford to remain in the business, then that's a shame. But it's not the priority. The priority is people having places to live, not people being able to make money out of what should be people's homes. Thank you.
Thank you. I call upon Councillor Jones to on behalf of the Labour Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Catt and Councillor Haynes. Won't be surprised that I'm pleased that you brought this motion, because it's a topic that's very close to my heart. And I think it's really crucial that we talk about issues that directly affect our citizens, and this is something that particularly interests me, and we're talking about well over 20% of our citizens who are living in the private rented sector. I suppose I just want to go back to the core objectives of this council, which is to provide safe and secure and affordable housing across all tenures of people in the city, really. And in this objective, we're totally committed. And that goes back to the days of the first Labour councillor elected back in 1903. That was Herbert Whittard. And on one of Whittard's leaflets, it simply says, workers, vote for yourselves by voting for Whittard. The landlord wants big rents for little houses. The employer wants long hours for short wages. The worker wants big healthy houses for low rents and high wages for shorter hours. I think if there was ever a leaflet that summed up what we needed to be doing. And it's questioning. I think it sums up, what we're fighting for. So we know the problem is the bad landlords. There are some good ones, but there are some exceptionally bad ones, and hoping that their change is working. So now we know what the problem is, how do we fix it? This is the important bit, and it focuses on, as a council, having the resources and focusing on equipping ourselves with the capacity and firepower to take on landlords, protect tenants and push back in a powerful and meaningful way against the problems private renters face. As Labour Council, despite being one of the hardest cut by this Tory government since 2010, we have continued to invest in this service and expanding it, and have directed it against some of the worst landlords you'll find in this city. And I was really pleased that in the last budget we had extra resources. We've got some great examples of good practice where we've taken on the onus of Faith Lane and Sat National Case Law. We've had further cases with the work done at St Peter's, and we've had a recent case with some student accommodation in my own ward that shows what good enforcement action can take. But we must have big ambitions for the future. The goal set by the council to fulfil the objective to licence all private rented properties in Norwich will make a seismic and profound difference in our city. This will take time, and it's absolutely critical that the evidence base we develop to put forward the case for this power to be granted was not to be successfully challenged and overturned by Tory government ministers or by landlords in court. This has sadly happened to other councils, and talking to colleagues in other areas, having that firm base is crucial. Whilst not outwardly visible maybe, there are a number of crucial steps taken towards this goal that we've already done. This has included very significant capital spend on new IT services to accommodate a greatly expanded licensing service, along with a research base being put together, which was proposed in the motion, I think it was September Council, and this has already been commenced, that will help support that and allow us to bring this forward through an external organisation. I must reiterate, what we propose in terms of expanding licensing must have an evidence base. Too many amazing schemes have been halted by the Secretary of State. I'll ensure that what we bring forward is on the most solid foundation that they cannot undermine. Lastly, there's a call to government. We need radical legislative change which puts power and control in the hands of private renters and give councils like ours true powers it needs. But coupled with that, we need to build millions of new homes, council homes and more affordable housing to deliver upon the needs of our growing population. There's no way around it. Lord, where to finish? I want to believe that in the months and years ahead, councillors who sat in this chamber 100 years ago had the conviction and courage to build nearly 30,000 council houses to tackle landlordism and give housing choice and power to Norwich people, will look down on us and believe that we have the same determination, same passion and same hope to strive forward and make the changes this generation of Norwich people need for the right for good housing to become the norm, not the exception. I know that all councillors are committed to this, and I hope you will support this motion. As Cabinet Member, I look forward to providing further updates on licensing schemes and other potential regulatory proposals to improve the private rented sector as these continue to develop.
Thank you. Councillor Ackwood, would you like to respond on behalf of the Lib Dems, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As rising house prices have taken home ownership out of the reach of many, the private rental sector has doubled in size over the past 20 years. With rents increasing, private tenants spend an average 32% of their income on their accommodation or more, compared with 18% for owner-occupiers. One single parent said this to me, and I know I've said this before: housing is a joke. Landlords do not like people on benefits. Apparently we don't look after properties. I take pride in where I live. Plus housing benefit does not cover your rent, so half my benefits go on to bring it up. Unsurprisingly, the House of Commons Public Accounts Committee last year found evidence of unlawful discrimination in the sector, with 25% of landlords unwilling to let to non-British passport holders and 52% refusing to take tenants on housing benefit. It also found that fast rising rents and low standards mean that safe, suitable housing is too often out of reach for renters. More than 1 in 8 privately rented homes in England poses a serious threat to the health and safety of their occupants, with tenants reluctant to complain for fear of no-fault eviction. Living not far from here in a basement flat was a single man with a degenerative lung condition who fell into the category of fearful non-complainers. And it was only when he went to have a double lung transplant that we realised the full horror of the mould and damp in his flat. Sadly, the transplant came too late for him. A decent home standard exists for social tenants. The same needs to apply to people paying much higher rents in the private rented sector. The Renters Reform Bill has the potential to deliver a promise made by Theresa May way back in 2019, but repeatedly delayed. It contains not just an end to no-fault evictions, but also additional rights, such as being able to appeal unfair rent increases, and to not be automatically rejected for a tenancy if you have a pet or children. In theory, it's a good start to providing better rights for those in the sector. It will not resolve every ill, but it will certainly help improve the lot for many renters. This bill will not bring down rents, it will not increase the number of rental properties, and it will not by itself solve our country's housing crisis. But if it reaches the statute books, it will give some of our poorest and least cared for citizens a little bit more certainty and a few more rights. The bill received its second reading in the Commons last month. Unfortunately, the government bench is packed with MPs who are also landlords, and many of whom have already indicated a willingness to prevent the legislation ever reaching the statute books. The long-awaited ban on Section 21 no-fault evictions will not be brought in until a new court process and stronger possession grounds for landlords are in place, the government has also confirmed. Shelter has warned of a terrible winter of evictions, as it estimates that 1 in 10 private renters is at risk of losing their homes, while the government drags its feet on banning so-called no-fault evictions. As it currently stands, and as this wide-ranging motion says, the bill does not go far enough to give renters the security they need. Amongst other things, Shelter is calling for eviction notice periods to be increased from 2 to 4 months, for an end to all unfair evictions, by making sure that there are no loopholes for landlords to exploit, for unfair affordability barriers to finding homes to be removed, such as asking for 2 months' rent or more in advance. Whilst we should remember that there are many good landlords who respond appropriately when tenants report problems, we need the government to deliver on their promises so that every private renter has long-term security in their home and the power to assert their rights. To get to the heart of the difference between some landlords and most tenants, for the former, it is an investment, and for the latter, a home. We fully support this motion.
Thank you. Any other members who wish to speak? Councillor Mike Sands and then Councillor Maguire.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I was just looking to find the average rent figure in there again, which seems a bit low when I look at some of the rents across both ward, because hold on to your seats, folks. Some of the rents of HMOs in our ward are in excess of £3,000 per month, which means, of course, we have large numbers of homes which exclude families. And not only do they exclude families, the rents are generally for either young working adults or students who are receiving various grants, student loans, etc. And of course, their rents are exploitative as well. What we are looking forward to in the future, of course, is the construction of far more council-owned properties across, not just in Norwich, but across the whole country. And that means then it will force developers to start building the right homes in the right places at the right price. In other words, it will force developers to start building genuinely affordable homes as well. Sadly, when we look at some of the estates in outlying parts of the county, the one where the pig farm was cited in the press recently, I can guarantee those homes won't be affordable. They'll be there for people who have perhaps gross incomes. And we have the situation again and again and again of people on low incomes unable to afford decent rents unless they can find a council house to rent through being on the council waiting list. Private rentals, of course, is going to be largely impossible for these people. And of course, it all comes back to the Thatcher years and the right to buy, and this is something which we need to end in the future when we have a change of government next year.
Oh, well done. You all voted for Anglia Square development.
Sorry. Can you please leave the chamber? Thank you. Councillor Maguire.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I offer my thanks to Councillors Catt and Haynes for choosing at this crucial moment in politics to point up this important work. And I'm pleased to say work this council has been carrying out in quite an excellent manner to address issues facing our residents, both private and public. Reference has been made already to the English House Conditions Survey, where something like 14% of private rented properties have been found to have at least one Category 1 hazard. That's 3.5 times the amount for council-owned property. So it is right that we continue our work there, and Councillor Jones' speech has very ably covered some of these issues. And here in Norwich, the Labour administration uses resources to target the worst. It builds up the quality of the private sector where it can. It could do more, it could do it more quickly, but until we get the Labour government into Whitehall, that just will not happen. One of the many victims of this government's barbaric acts with its use of austerity has been the cuts in spending in this area. I must say, however, thanks to the resolution of the Labour administration, but also mention must be made of the officers. We have an incredibly high calibre of officers, and they have done so much to find ways in which we continue this work, and I salute them. Lord Mayor, it's already been said, building more council houses is the quickest solution to this problem. And when it comes to the provision of high quality housing, the Labour administration really shows itself to be second to none. And over the years, our residents have seen a programme of increasing energy efficiency, for example, both in terms of retrofitting, insulation, solar panels, and direct water systems, and river source heat pump, along with the uses of heat exchange pumps, but also with the building of new homes, all to a very high standard of energy efficiency. They made huge savings for our tenants, as well as aiding our phenomenal strides in becoming a net zero council. We not only build these communities, we have a duty to maintain them, and I must make another shout out for Councillor Martin Peake, because over the years he has campaigned tirelessly on behalf of the citizens of Northdale and Margaret in particular, and those estates are starting to see the benefits of the estates aesthetics programme. His considerable effort has finally given some great results, including a visit today when I saw piles of what was fly tip rubbish and completely cleared away. More is planned. Lord Mayor, I'm proud to be a Labour councillor and to have contributed to all of this. I shall be voting for this motion. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Any other members wish to indicate? I had Stupley, Fulton McAllister, and Hinman, yes. I think that's just demonstrating that, like my laptop, which the Council ID team wants to reboot in a minute, we're getting ready for some form of cover. Councillor Stupley.
Yes, thank you, Lord Mayor. I've been calling for stronger licensing on private rented properties for a long time, probably 4.5 years, and I hope this motion will be a catalyst to bring that forward. So I welcome this, and I thank you for bringing it to us. And I hope that our new group leader will add her signature to the letters to the various bodies. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fulton McAllister.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and again, thank you for this motion being tabled. It's a motion I intend to vote for. However, I do want to say that we need to be cautious about describing the Renters Reform Bill as being a more revolutionary document than it may be. It does not go far enough. Shelter has condemned the fact that it does not address some of the key issues. which lead to people facing homelessness. We've heard a lot of talk about good landlords. Ultimately, the good landlords decide not to buy homes. The good landlords are landlords who would invest in commercial property rather than housing and would choose to exploit the people who fully bought into the capitalist system. The good landlords are those who stay away from housing. My house should not be worth X £100,000 or whatever. My house should be worth one house. That is how all of us in this chamber should see these things, and that is ultimately how we should look at trying to reorganise society. It's a long way to go, but we need to shoot for the stars and reach the moon in these types of situations. Ultimately, do we go far enough in our regulation of private sector homes? Unfortunately, no, we don't. Is that the fault of the council? No. It's because our hands are tied by successive governments who are valuing capitalist interests. And ultimately, we need to be significantly regulating the sector, if not trying to, as Dennis Healy would say, squeezing them until the pips squeak. And ultimately, we should be trying to force landlords out of the sector, or certainly of housing, so that ordinary people are able to get on the housing ladder, so that councils are not having to sell their homes under right to buy to unscrupulous landlords, which is what ends up being the situation. So I do support the motion, but I do think we need to be careful about giving the government more kudos than it deserves on their recent rental reform bill.
Thank you. Councillor Keelan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to highlight something that Councillor Ackroyd mentioned when she was speaking about shelters demands. For Section 21, no fault eviction, as we heard, forces tenants, private tenants, to leave their homes within 2 months. And I think this should be emphasised. We talked about affordability of homes. We talked about tenants being frightened to bring up needed repairs in case their landlords decide it's too much trouble, evict them. 2 months to pack up your home, house hunt, and get out. 8 weeks. Not only does that threaten your own sanctuary and security, but it's totally unrealistic to expect people to up their lives and sticks to move out of their homes within 2 months, only to find also that rents have probably in their area increased in the time that they've been living in their homes, forcing them to find money out of nowhere. What we ultimately need, as we have heard, almost like a leitmotif throughout this evening, is we desperately need a change of government, because this government is not going to ban Section 21 no fault evictions. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to speak on this item? No, in which case, Councillor Capp, would you like to start, please?
Yes, thank you, and thank you everyone for your comments and support of the motion. I'll just quickly touch on a few points, and I won't take much time. I completely agree about the renters reform bill. There's almost a page in this motion about how it's just a significantly inadequate piece of legislation that covers some small points, but is completely undermined by the rest of the legislation. And a lot of the parts in this motion come directly from feedback from Shelter, Acorn, and the recommendations of their Levelling Up Housing Communities Committee. I do agree as well that the position of this council with support of this motion is slightly undermined by the fact that we weren't able to hold the developers of Bagger Square to minimum requirements on affordable housing. And I also completely agree about the need to end right to buy. Unfortunately, I wish that a Labour government would end that. It's been made pretty clear by the Labour leadership that that's not the case, and it was a policy that was actually brought into the public sphere by the Labour Party in their manifesto in 1959. Again, I hope that they change their mind. because that would be one of the biggest things that makes a difference to the private rented sector as well as social housing. But thank you everyone for your support for the motion, it's really appreciated.
Thank you. We'll now move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. It's unanimous, eventually. Thank you. Right. So, to the point in the script which tells you we've been more than 2 hours. So, as we reach the 2-hour mark of the meeting, I need to ask if anyone has any opposition to any business that remains on the order papers. We've got 3 motions left and the 2 reports. So, Councillor Jones.
Yes.
Could you tell us sorry, which one you have?
Motion 8F.
8F, that's the one practice. No. So, in opposition to that, anything else opposed? Councillor Fulton, Councillor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I think that we've heard a lot about the importance of having open transparency here. And with that in mind, I would propose opposing the 8E autumn statement. I would also invite one of my group colleagues to oppose my motion on the Freedom from Fear campaign. Thank you, Mike.
So just to confirm, you're opposing that being taken as unopposed?
Yes.
Thank you. 8D, 8, Councillor Stoddard has opposed 8D. Councillor Fulton, Councillor 8E, Councillor Jones 8F. Now, any opposition to the report papers that would have been earlier on in the agenda? Are we happy with those? So we're happy with those. Right, so we... Sorry? Oh, and the minutes as well. Are we happy with the minutes that were circulated from previous meetings? So we'll now have a 10-minute comfort break and we will come back and debate items 8D onwards. I'd just like to remind members that there is an absolute guillotine of 3 hours and we're now around about 2 hours, 10 minutes or so in the meeting. So I'm just seeing where we're Are we quorum at the moment? We're quorum, so we're good. I call upon Councillor Fulton McAllister to move item 8D. He's not here, so item 8D, if the mover is not around for that, then does that fall? I call upon Councillor Kendrick to move item 8E. Councillor Kendrick is not present, so that falls. I call upon Councillor Galvin to move item 8F, one Norwich practices.
Thank you. Yes. Would you like me to start?
I gave a 10-minute break. Council was quorate at that 10-minute point, so we have restarted. In the absence of councillors to move items 8D and 8E, we're now progressing on to 8A.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Children with asthma in schools, people needing care after surgery, homeless adults and those with trauma and complex needs, refugees, migrants and asylum seekers, people who need to call in on their way home from the city or take their sick child in an emergency. All of these have been served by One Norwich practices over the past 15 years. The surgery alone has grown to have 10,000 on its books. The separate walk-in centre operates from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. every day and sees around 250 patients a day. All of this adds up to at least 120,000 vital appointments a year. Receptionists, nurses, doctors and managers have worked hard for this valuable service and patients have been well cared for by them. From the website, we can track the history of this city institution. I quote, Norwich Practices Limited, now part of One Norwich Practices, was formed in January 2007. It was formed to ensure that the planned walk-in centre would be run by a Norwich-based team already working within the NHS. Also to ensure the highest quality of service for patients, the service will be GP-led. MPL is wholly owned by Norwich GP Practices. As the website says, to this day, today the organisation provides a number of community health services for the NHS and continues to run the very successful NHS walk-in and health centre for registered patients at Ruan House on Ruan Road in Norwich, along with lymphedema and other community services. Yet suddenly, just over a month ago, on the 23rd of October, staff were informed at an emergency meeting that due to financial failure, the organisation would have to be shut down. Patients have not been informed, many staff have resigned, those who are left in the dark. This, at the worst possible time of year to transfer such a service, and when practices are already straining to cope across the city. It seems to be a chaotic way to run such an important service, and we are all left wondering what has gone so very wrong. As a result, we need our council to look urgently at the impact of this potential closure and recommissioning of the Vulnerable Adults Service on Norwich City Council's responsibilities regarding homelessness and the rough sleeping strategy, and to set out steps that the council will take to engage with partners to minimise risk to patients. We also need our council, in the light of Norwich City Council's involvement in the City of Sanctuary initiative and stated aim to become a council of sanctuary, to present an urgent report on the impact on refugees, asylum seekers and migrants of the potential closure and recommissioning of the asylum seeker service, and to set out steps that the council will take to engage with partners to minimise risk to patients. We need Norfolk County Council to present an urgent report assessing the impact the transition will have on the health landscape and risk to patients in Norwich, and set out steps that the council will take to engage with partners to minimise risk to patients, including vulnerable service users. Most of all, we need to know how can a limited company plunge into debt so fast when the service it's delivering has not changed? How can share prices go from £13.32 in 21-22 to £2.94 in 22-23? to nil in 23-24. What is the combination of factors in leadership or circumstance that mean that the recent performance of the business has so dramatically eroded the accumulated shareholder value that had previously been built up? What happened that despite savings plans in spring and a case made to the ICB for more funding, the losses incurred in the period to the 31st of August have resulted in the company having net liabilities of 0.3 million, and without financial support it was forecast to be unable to meet its trading liabilities during December. Was funding allocated correctly? Was there a systemic problem in accounting and governance that was ignored? Or were the board aware of the issues? Had staff ever raised the alarm? What actions were taken as a result? Were the ICB, who are now bailing out the service to the tune of hundreds of thousands of pounds, aware? What actions did they take? We are told that a new provider will be found. Indeed, today, I think a new provider is being announced. Some staff have been tupied over, and patients will, it is hoped, will be looked after as ever. Yet the questions remain. Why and how did this happen? Who's bearing the losses? Where is the governance? Where is the transparency? How can we make sure that this does not happen again? How can we be sure that the new providers do not follow the same path? And how have they been persuaded to take this loss maker on? How will conflicts of interest be managed in the retendering of services? This is a public institution. This is public money. This is our NHS. That is why these very important questions remain to be answered. And only a public inquiry can find out what has gone so very wrong and honestly get to the bottom of what seems to everyone concerned to be chaos and incompetence.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. Councillor Osborne is the nominated seconder. If he's not available to second, I can't change the seconder from the published agenda, so Councillor Osborne is not around to second it, then I'm afraid we can't continue with this motion. Councillor Osborne left now. Okay, so that motion can't be seconded, so there can't be any further debate on that. Am I right on that? Just double checking that.
That's the end of the meeting,
Well, it won't be the end of the meeting because now that I'm prepared to use Chair's discretion to take items 8D and 8E because the members weren't around at the time we restarted the meeting, but I'll use my discretion to hear that.
Thank you.
We'll just get a final answer on not the Chair is aware of it. Well, if this has demonstrated anything, perhaps we need to have a look at the Constitution at the moment. So.
Lord Mayor, I would ask you apply the same stance that you took with these other motions, and you allow the motions to be proposed based on who is present in the room. So that it's adhering to the precedent you set just a moment ago.
No, the question.
The Constitution is clear on the proposer, but is silent on seconder. So that's just what we're in a constitutional conundrum at 10:15 on a Tuesday evening.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, the Constitution is clear. The individual who's the seconder has made clear about the alternative route to getting it seconded, but unfortunately Councillor Osborne did not make that clear to the Chair. Okay, so the ruling is thus. I will take a seconder for F, and then I will move to D and E and allow those now that those members are back in the chamber. So after that brief hiatus, someone.
So do you allow all the questions to ask to council members who wouldn't hear?
Sorry, I beg your pardon, Councillor Driver, would you use the microphone when you're asking a question?
I was just wondering if you were allowed to use your discretion, and because the council member wouldn't hear or the council member wouldn't hear, someone else could ask that question on board.
Well, we're talking about motions rather than questions.
Well, talking about the same kind of thing, isn't it?
Anyway, well, we have a resolution, so Councillor Catlin, you're going to second this.
Yeah, I second the motion and formally reserve my right to speak.
Very valid. So in which case I'll now move over to Councillor Jones, who will speak on behalf of the Labour Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm responding to this motion for the Labour Group, and I think probably, unlike many, I'm actually someone who's employed by the NHS, so I feel in an interesting position to comment on this. I'm a clinical nurse specialist, and I work in the mental health crisis team, and I'm proud to work alongside people through some of the most difficult periods of their lives. And despite the challenges as professionals see, we do that regardless. So I hope you understand why I take a particular interest in this motion, because these are services I interact with. When I heard the title of this Green Party motion, I thought, isn't this great? A promotion about the National Health Service at a time of crisis in the NHS caused by a Tory government that's never been more severe. This sounds interesting. Perhaps this could have been a motion which looked at the structural factors, the political policy, and frankly the real agenda which has butchered a great national institution and damaged the health of the people. Or about the fact that actually primary care is run as private businesses in the first place. I think that's a bigger issue. After all, if you listen to the COVID-19 inquiry go at the moment, you start to get a bit of a picture of why we've ended up in this place. But when I look at this motion, it did not fill me as someone who works in the NHS with much confidence. Quite frankly, as a nurse who prides herself in honesty with her patients, the wording and sentiment of the motion disappointed me. I think disappointed is the word that really resonates with me. Crucial factor is that people who use the services provided at present by Norwich practices will need to know that our primary concern should be that they will know that they're continuing to receive a service. The services that are currently commissioned to be delivered by Norwich will have a new provider and a transition date that's agreed with no risk to service continuity. The ambiguity and at points confusing wording in this motion implies uncertainty, and that's a risky strategy and causes people distress. That's something that's far from helpful for the patients utilising this provision. The motion notes that this imagined closure of services will potentially be around one of the peaks of illness during the year. Once more, it's a company that's likely to close at this time after all the services are transferred to a new provider and services are not threatened. That company may close at such a time is irrelevant and conflates the services that patients receive and the company that's currently commissioned as the provider. It's not helpful to patients and causes unnecessary confusion. I cannot and will not be party to what amounts to fear-mongering in this case, and it's likely to cause people more distress. I'm disappointed it's been brought to this chamber. There are many people, though, who did work tirelessly to continue and try and make Norwich able to continue as a provider, but unfortunately it was not to be. And again, I must reiterate, the service is being recommissioned to an alternative provider and is going to transition. And transitioning in services between providers is a reality in the current NHS model. Not something I'm personally a massive fan of, but something I've experienced and know happens regularly. I'm assured that patient care will not be compromised, and I'm sure we can all agree that's the greatest priority for all of us. Therefore, I see little point to this, as it conflates two separate things: the service patients receive and the company will not practice. So the company will close. It's the company that may close once services transfer. The motion talks vaguely about conflict of interest with no clear explanation of what's being alleged, and vaguely about governance and management, but again with no specific examples of what it wants investigated. Feels more like a fishing expedition than a clear set of proposals for an investigation. Indeed, most of the content seems to be based on hearsay and conjecture. On first reading this option, I thought there was an option of amending it potentially, but the closer I looked, the more impossible this appeared. From top to bottom, there are inaccuracies, and it mentions nothing about the impact of funding cuts from Tory government or structural factors that are so critical to understanding why this happened. Therefore, I cannot support this motion. In the new year, I will bring forward a new motion on the health systems in Norwich, which puts this right and puts the blame of this on the real architects of our health service in this state, and to this extreme, and out the out-of-touch Tory government. Hopefully in the months to follow, we'll have a general election, change of government, one that values our NHS, the people who use it, and particularly the staff within it. Thank you.
Thank you. I call on Councillor Lovett to speak on behalf of the Lib Dems.
I'm not sure how to follow that. I thought I understood what this is about. It was a shock to hear about the closure or the pending closure of the One Norwich practices, and more so the walk-in centre. But this motion being on the being brought this evening is actually quite my concern, because it has resulted in hearing that the services are going to be transferred and the service will continue as normal for those who need it. So I am in favour of supporting the motion, and I'm very much in favour of the fact that I've heard that it's going to continue. So yeah, I think it is concerning that it has collapsed, and there probably does need to be some investigation of why public money was given to an organisation that doesn't seem to be fit to spend it efficiently, and therefore it's collapsed. But as long as the service is continuing, really that's basically all I'm worried about. But I will support the motion because I do believe it does need some investigation as to why it happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members wish to indicate to speak? Councillor Champion.
I would just like to highlight that to ask for an urgent report to look at the impact of these events seems like an entirely reasonable request. And I see no reason not to follow that through. This is all part of a wider neoliberal agenda of privatising services. And I think it's imperative that from a local level we work within the powers that we have got to ensure that there is transparency and accountability. And this is what this motion is about. And so I fail to understand why there would be any opposition to this motion whatsoever. And I'm afraid I can see no reason other than political expediency for this motion to be opposed at all.
Councillor Hamilton.
We might be there anyway, but can I move under Standing Order 71K to proceed without further debate?
Okay, we need a seconder for that, please. Seconder for Councillor Jones. All those in favour? 17. All those against? 15. So we now move to the vote. Both right replies, of course. My apologies, Councillor Galvin. You still get to reply.
Thank you very much. Thanks for listening. I know it's late. Of course, it's about the NHS. I want the NHS to be run well. I think there might be an internal market in it, which I entirely disagree with. But if there is an internal market, it's really extremely important that governance in that is transparent, it's run well. I think hearsay conjecture is not fair. I've had numerous people come to me with accounts which are anything but, frankly, and it might behove you to actually listen to those staff. It's impacted much wider than the staff. It's impacted on patients, as you may well know. So there are a lot of accurate statements that have been made, and it's important information. It's important for our city. It does merit an inquiry. If the service is relet, which I believe it has been, it's equally important that the new service runs steadily and governance is seen to operate everywhere and people understand how these things work. The internal NHS market is a very complex system, and the problem is that there are sets of interests within it which are not transparent, and these are the things that need drawing out. It's beyond a political point, it's beyond making points about one government. It's something where we need to actually look at what's happened, listen to people, take care of the staff, take care of the patients, and I'm sure you know this above all of us in here. So given that One Norwich practices have been providing that public service and the impact on Norwich residents and on staff of this collapse and the evidence of severe financial mismanagement, which I have, we really do hope that all council in here will support the call for an inquiry into what happened for the sake of accountability and the service in the future. I do appeal to you to think about that as you vote.
Thank you. We'll now move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. 15. All those against, please indicate. 17. So that falls. Thank you. Well, the good news is we've still got about half an hour left before we get to the 3-hour mark, so we'll reverse back a bit. Well, it didn't, because we don't count when we had the interruptions and the break, so sorry about that. So we can now move on to item 8D, Freedom from Fear campaign. I call upon Councillor Fulton McAllister to move that motion.
Many thanks, Lord Mayor. I'm going to try and curtail my speech somewhat so that hopefully we can hear both motions. I joined USDOR as a member when I was 14. That was the first trade union that I joined when I was doing occasional bits of shop work and work at centre parks. It's very clear probably to a number of members in this chamber the type of household I grew up in, that idea drilled into me, but it served me well through my life, and ultimately it's with great pride that I propose this motion. I've spent the time from when I was 16 to when I was 19 as a USDOR rep representing my colleagues when they faced serious assaults within the workplace amongst other issues. And ultimately I've seen all too often the type of abusive behaviour that members in the retail sector often have to tolerate because the law in this area is so weak. Both the law in terms of employment law and the law in terms of protecting people from this type of abuse in the workplace from members of the public. We saw during the pandemic a railway guard being deliberately coughed on by a commuter with COVID. Ultimately, frontline workers are not just police, doctors, nurses. They are our retail workers, some of those at the thin end of the wedge in society. Scotland has already taken the lead by introducing I've got the name, apologies, the Workers' Protection Act, in which they make it a far lower criminal bar in terms of obstructing workers and specifically retail workers in their line of duty. They introduce a far lower criminal bar in terms of the assaults that people face in the workplace, and they've introduced mandatory fines at lower levels for those who are shoplifting I think the mandatory level now in Scotland is at £200, so that retail workers know the police will actually attend site if there is theft of a certain value, rather than just being told by the police, sorry, we're too busy. Which, although the bar is still relatively high, it gives retail workers some confidence about when they will expect police to come and support them while undertaking their day-to-day jobs. Ultimately, what we expect of a future Labour government? Well, a future Labour government has said that it would introduce very similar legislation to that which has been introduced in Scotland. Obviously, in the meantime, while we wait for that, we need to be doing something for those residents and those workers in our city. And this is why we need to be working hand in hand with Restore, letting them have use of this building if there's any need for them to do so, to launch any campaigns, allowing them to, supporting them in highlighting the importance of protecting retail workers in our city and encouraging our residents to behave in as respectful a way as possible with people who are just trying to do their jobs. That is a much curtailed version of the speech I would like to give, but I would like all the motions to go through this evening, and I hope everyone will be supportive of this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Giles, would you like to second the item?
Yes, I have prepared a speech. I think in the light of ensuring people catch the last bus, I think I will reserve my right.
Thank you very much. Councillor Catt, would you like to say anything on behalf of the Green Group?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this motion before as a council. I used to work in hospitality at many different levels, so I think it's a really, really important issue and a great one to be bringing to the council chamber. I'll keep it short.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ackroyd, would you like to add anything?
Yes, I feel I have to say that I've also worked in a shop, as it's clearly where one has to be. Yes, we're going to support this motion. I just want to say the thing that I began with, or what I was intending to begin with, which is that we will expect to go into any shop and receive friendly service from the people who work there. And for those living on their own, local shops in particular provide a service that goes beyond selling goods. They may be the only person that the customer will have a conversation with that day, and often they go massively beyond what is their role in helping vulnerable customers, as I know only too well from when my late husband was living with dementia. So I won't go into all the research and all the bits that I've carefully written down and Ustle and so on and so forth, but just to say that it is shameful to see how people are treated when they're going about their job that we all need, and we fully support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just like most people in this chamber, I've worked in a shop. My dad had his own business, and I would work with him on a Saturday in King's Cross in central London, which was a bit of a rough neighbourhood to a certain degree. I remember a time we were there on Saturday morning, and a guy came in. It was a print shop, so he sold stationery. He was acting dodge, it was very suspicious behaviour. I was on my own in the front, as many shopkeepers would be. My dad was doing his paperwork out the back. I kind of got close, I had a look, and then I saw that he had a knife in the back of his trousers, and it really rammed home to me how vulnerable shop workers can be. I backed off, allowed the shoplifting action to take place. I didn't want to confront, and obviously we called the authorities. We're in a world where cost of living is getting harder and harder for people. People can't afford the necessities. There are many driving reasons why shop workers are in that front line of dealing with situations which are dangerous. Many businesses in my part of the city centre of Port Hamlet, as reported in the local paper over the years, have been held up or assaulted by people coming into their shops. We could go further as a council. We could be looking at our CCTV management. We could be increasing it, and we could be making sure it's monitored 24 hours a day to help support those retail workers. So I applaud the motion, but let's take some action to really support these workers. Thank you.
Do any other members wish to speak? Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Lord Mayor.
My first job, actually, Saturday job, was working in a supermarket, and I went on at various stages of my life to work in several other supermarkets. This can be a very demanding environment to work in, and it is low paid and often very undervalued. So I thoroughly support this motion. I currently work in a shop where thankfully I have no such issues, but I'm aware that a lot of other people do. So I welcome this motion and fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? Before I bring Councillor Fulton-Canister in to reply, I think I should add also that we're going to go for Council Bingo here, because not only was my first job in a shop, it was in a shop in Tuxwood. So, Councillor Fulton-Canister.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. To keep it brief, all I would say is obviously we've heard some positive statements of support in here. I hope that if any of you do witness abuse against shop workers, that you, at least if you feel able to, stand by their side. It makes a huge difference. I've had to do that myself, and ultimately that other person then backs off. It's obviously make sure it is safe to do so, make sure you are mentally and physically robust enough to feel that you're able to do that. But that is a huge element of help. It's just what being a good ally in all respects of life is about, and is similar to advice in other situations regarding sexual harassment and various other elements. So please do echo the same behaviour that you would in those other situations. And thank you everybody for your support.
Thank you. Let's move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. That is unsurprisingly unanimous. Thank you very much. 8E, autumn statement. Call upon Councillor Kendrick to move item 8E.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And I also shall curtail what I have to say, because I also have a bus to catch. But I would just like to make a few remarks regarding the autumn statement. Just this morning, it was described as a very big financial risk. Now, that wasn't by the Labour Party or the Local Government Association. It was by Richard Hughes, Chair of the Office of Budget Responsibility. And he went on to say, it is very difficult to assess the credibility of the government's spending plans, because after March of 2025, the government doesn't have any spending plans. So literally, we do not know what the shape of government spending will be in just over 18 months' time. But it does look, looking at the what was announced in the government's statement, that you can actually be seeing large-scale cuts in government spending from the year 25-26. And given that, as before, it's likely to protect services such as health and education, that would quite possibly mean that local government will suffer a further 16% cut in spending. Now, as this motion points out in the preamble, since 2010, we have seen a real terms cut in what the government gives to Norwich City Council of 67% government grants. And this is one of the highest in the country. It is actually, I think, a remarkable testimony to the excellent financial management of this council that we have actually managed to protect services in the way that we have. But other councils in the south of England, such as Wokingham, have had their funding cut by just 2%, and yet just a few weeks ago, they actually declared a Section 144 notice, saying they're in extreme financial distress. Unquestionably, we have seen over the last 12 months inflation unleashed, and it really has hit the poorest in our community very, very hard. I think it's remarkable that when one looks back at the Conservative promises at the 2010 election, they claimed that national debt was too high. That was then at 60% of GDP, it's now nearly 100% at GDP. They promised to cut taxes. Taxes now, of course, at the highest level they've been since the Second World War. There are other examples, such as immigration, they promised to cut to the tens of thousands, in fact, it's now at record levels. I'm only just so glad it didn't promise to improve our sex lives, because we'd either all be celibate otherwise. Thank you.
And on that note, everyone suddenly woke up. Councillor Stoddart, would you like to second the motion, please?
I can't follow that. I do have a lovely speech prepared, but in view of the time, I'll save you from hearing my lovely speech and formally second, reserve the right to speak, but probably won't.
Thank you. Councillor Price, would you like to second on behalf of the group?
Yes, I'll speak briefly. Councillor Stone, I might decide that he does want to speak. But you wouldn't be surprised, I'm sure Councillor Kendrick can read my mind when he knows that we'll be happy to support, because he could clearly read the Chancellor's mind, because 2 days before the autumn statement was actually published, this motion actually went in. So I do find that quite interesting. You were ready to critique it as you were before it. But if you're happy to tell me what the football results will be on Saturday, it'll be great for my polls people. But moving on to my time to speak, thank you, is that, it is interesting to see that Labour didn't actually oppose anything in the autumn statement. So that's quite an interesting fact when we're complaining about it here today. I haven't heard, and to correct me on your return to speech, I haven't heard any commitment from Labour that they will actually invest more money in local authorities. And what we need is the Green New Deal, the green policy to really invest in local communities and really invest in a transforming economy that is also low carbon and has a sustainable planet for the future. But that's not what we're hearing from Labour at the moment. I do sincerely hope that if we do have a new government, and if that government is Labour, if they don't commit money to local authorities, I look forward to seeing this group bring a motion back of a similar like, and we'll be writing to the Chancellor of Exchequer, the Labour Chancellor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lovett, do you have anything you wish to add?
Yes, just to say that it was hugely disappointing, the autumn statement, with Conservatives sleight of hand, wanting people to believe that they were giving away a meaningful tax cut, while actually taxes were at an all-time high. No mention of social services reform, and one of the really low points was pushing people who were disabled and sick into work. There was nothing much in there to commend. But I do agree, this motion is really about funding for local authorities, asking the council to write to the Chancellor and demand he offer a fair deal for Norwich. But something else you could do is to perhaps look at an early day motion that the Liberal Democrats had put in. It was on the 16th of November, and it calls for fairer funding for local councils. And one of the signatories so far is a Labour MP. So perhaps that's something else that could be looked at. It was Labour's John MacDonald has signed it, and perhaps even Clive Lewis might sign it as well. It's an early day motion tabled by Liberal Democrat MP Helen Morgan, and it was tabled on the 16th of November 23. Council budgets and audits. An EDM to 67. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Any other members wish to speak at this stage? No, in which case, Councillor Kendrick, would you like to respond?
Very briefly to Councillor Price's remarks. Well, first of all, if I could predict the football scores, I wouldn't announce it here, I'd be going down to betting shop. Secondly, of course, the Chancellor's statement was so widely leaked in the press, and it was quite clear what was going to happen. Actually, in 1947, Hugh Dalton had to resign as the Labour Chancellor of the Exchequer because he made an indiscreet remark that a journalist wasn't even reported before the budget, so it really does show how public standards are declining. And you say about the Labour government, Labour has very clearly said that it will look at the fair funding formula, because what has happened is not just as the total amount of local government funding being reduced, but it's been unfairly taken away from urban areas such as Norwich and other big cities and given to Tory shires. That will be reversed under a Labour government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move to the vote. All those in favour, please indicate. is unanimous. Thank you very much, and that concludes our business for the evening. Thank you for enabling us to get through all of the motions before the 3-hour mark.